Welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. RollerGator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week?
Frankly, I've been a little bit disconnected from the news, and the average intelligence of my information has gone up. I don't know. Did anything happen? Anybody try to kill a president or something?
Well, no, not. Well, let's put it this way. They might have thought that they were attempting to, but they didn't make it so far as to actually get close to an attempt. So it depends on how you define it.
So they attempted to attempt to.
Yeah, they attempted attempt. Now, Alex, this week I have some good news. I have acquired a new set of controller devices that are going to allow me to run this show with a little bit more flexibility so that I have buttons in front of me now that easily access important features that were previously sort of elusive and hidden behind windows, and I had to use a mouse to navigate. So you will be happy to know that the quack button is now readily accessible at my fingertips, and I should not miss it that much going forward. Whereas previously the quack button was hidden behind windows that I would have to navigate to, and now it is not. That is not a problem anymore.
But tell me, are your new capabilities vibe coded?
They are not vibe coded. Actually, there was a little bit of a learning curve with this control device because it was Lua, and I don't code Lua a lot, but it was also sort of modularized. So each individual coding action was targeted to the thing that you were attempting to work with. So it was a little bit of a time.
So you did it the old-fashioned way?
Yes, I did it the old-fashioned way. I even had to code a Python intermediary to capture the MIDI signals and then reroute them to the media player so I can pause and play the media scripts. So there we go. Look, but now we have
did you
right at our fingertips.
Name your variables in ancient Greek or what? It sounds very effortful.
but it's there now, okay? And so this device is going to make this show nice and zippy here, okay? Now, we have a story that preceded the origins of which preceded our time at this show. This story goes back to 2022. So while we were involved in the Twitter world and involved in controversies left and right, we were not doing this show weekly and summarizing all of the chaos that was going on. But we will go back to 2022 in order to introduce this story and then follow up with the updates from this week.
You know, law enforcement officers face all kinds of threats, but out in Longmeadow, they never saw this one coming. They say a woman weaponized bees to try to stop an eviction.
This one really takes the cake.
Investigators say the winged weapons came stacked in hives on a trailer, unleashed by this woman intent on stopping an eviction.
The bees came out unleashed and swarming, angry, and they started stinging everybody there.
Sheriff's deputies say hundreds of bees started swarming and stinging them, raising fears about possible allergic reactions.
One had a really high blood pressure, so was taken to the emergency room.
Deputies arrested 55-year-old Rory Susan Woods, who managed to zip up her beekeeper's suit in the chaos. Investigators say she didn't know the tenant, but is known to protest evictions.
That's not protesting. That is not demonstrating. That is breaking the law.
The sheriff says emotions often run high during evictions, but they've never planned for this kind of attack.
And when the bees pulled up, there's no turning to page 50 to say, hey, this is what you do when this happens.
But thanks to quick action, the woman was arrested quickly before anyone was seriously hurt.
Instead of looking at 4 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon with intent, she could have been looking at manslaughter.
Now, that woman, she was released on bail, and the very next day, investigators say that she was right back at that home protesting, but they say she was doing so peacefully.
There you go, Alex. That was a story we would have covered. Were we doing a show at the time, 2022, that would have been included in the roll-up. So I retroactively add it to something we have covered now. The woman who weaponized the bees. Now, Alex, there's nuances in law.
Good to know. Good to know.
If you are firing a gun indiscriminately at people, you have the ability to be charged per bullet that you fire. It is very possible that you could be charged per bullet and rank up several counts of a particular crime, one per bullet. And so I don't know how that might translate, in the legal system when you're counting the number of bees that might have been in a swarm.
I think given the fact that she doesn't control the exact trajectory of the bees, it should have been under the stochastic category.
Do not know her physiology and all of her powers, sir. You do not know her full capabilities. Now,
she didn't exactly aim at one person. She just created a situation. You see, the
update that we have
it's truly I could arguably this is speech.
This is speech. Okay, all right.
Yeah, she created a hostile work environment.
Well, the update that we have on this bee story is from Local 12, just this week. Woman who unleashed swarm of bees while she was being evicted learns her fate. According to WCVB,
she wasn't being evicted, right?
She was being evicted, yes. And that was
I think
her.
They said that she wasn't the evictee. She was a protester. Anyway.
She was protesting her eviction, I believe, is the.
I think she was protesting an eviction in general. I think she said she didn't know the tenant, but she just doesn't like this sort of thing. Anyway, maybe they were wrong.
According to WCVB, the 59-year-old Rory Susan Woods, who was accused of turning a swarm of bees into a weapon against law enforcement during an eviction in 2022, was found guilty by a jury. Deputies with Hampton County Sheriff's Office were conducting an eviction at a home around 9:15 a.m. on October 12, 2022, when a woman identified by authorities as Woods pulled up in a blue Nissan. She was accused of getting out of her vehicle, leaving her dog inside, then walking to the back of the vehicle before she revealed and opened multiple man-made beehives. A sheriff's deputy tried to stop her, but as the agitated bees started getting out and circling the area, he pulled back, the release said. She then smashed the lid and flipped the hive off the flatbed, making the bees extremely aggressive. They swarmed the area and stung several officers and other innocent bystanders who were nearby. Woods was said to have been dressed in a professional beekeeper's suit and began moving a tower of beehives into the house to stop the eviction, which had been stop and go for the better part of 2 years. A deputy stopped her before she could go inside. However, one deputy told Woods he and some others were allergic. Woods allegedly replied, "Oh, you're allergic? Good," per a report from Mass Live. One of the employees with the sheriff's office was hospitalized after suffering a sting. Woods was arrested and thousands of bees were said to have died during the incident, per WCVB's report. Now, Alex, you were frequenting the rationalist communities some time ago. That itself should be additional charges under the rationalist sort of epistemology of harm and suffering caused to living creatures. Is that not a correct understanding of some of the...
You mean the effective altruist?
Well, yes, the offshoot. Yes, the effective altruist offshoot. Yes.
Yes, they're an offshoot, and really, you don't fall under the rules unless you also belong to sex cult at the same time. Otherwise, you are exempt.
So this woman not only
inverse kosher, if you will,
bee soldiers, she is responsible for a bee holocaust in this sort of. She's a very selfish individual, I think we can say here. Yes. After she wasn't being a very good citizen. After
being, you say?
Yes. After being released from custody shortly after her arrest, Woods reportedly failed to appear for her trial scheduled on August 5th and fled to the state of Tennessee, where she was captured. According to WCVB, she refused to waive extradition back to Massachusetts and was returned on a governor's warrant 3 months later. Woods was found guilty of the following charges per the report: simple assault and battery, 2 counts, reckless assault, 2 counts. She was sentenced to 6 months behind bars with 148 days of credit for time previously served, according to WCVB. Now that is a almost 2-year time scale on bringing this woman to justice, Alex, and that was a situation nobody should have to be in.
There's nothing simple about this assault and battery. If anything, it was highly complicated.
Yes, and it's a situation that no reasonable person should ever be in. So now I have to make sure to use that button now that it's readily accessible, sir.
Very good. Yes, I mean it's look, I will say that this may be dumb, but it is not boring. What do you think?
Boring. That is correct.
It was creative. It was, this woman put some care and attention and thought into her act, and I think we should honor that if we want to see the world remain interesting.
That's very true. Now, we sometimes like to break up the dumb here, Alex. We sometimes like to play feel-good stories, something that really just is nice and warms our hearts inside. Now, this one, I have to say, we were a little late on. Are you familiar with the movie Home Alone, Alex?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And the house.
I recently revisited with the little ones.
Well, the externals of that house. I don't know if you grew up watching that movie, if it's been burned into your brain the way that it has been many people. Your eyes, when you close them, you see that house sort of like etched into your retinas. But that is a rather iconic house. And last year, it turns out, in the summertime, the person who owned that iconic house at the time of filming released a memoir about how life was like living in that house. And I think this was a heartwarming story that I'd like to catch us up on as he was interviewed by NBC5.
Is joining us in the studio tonight. And Lexi, you got a chance to actually talk to the original homeowner. This movie changed his life.
It truly changed his life. This was such a fun conversation. I got to meet John last week outside his former home. He told me all about life living inside what he describes as a fishbowl. Fans of the movie are always coming by to take photos and selfies. And though John no longer lives there, sharing his home with the world made for quite the life experience.
671 Lincoln Avenue may be one of the most famous addresses in Hollywood history. Kevin!
After all these years, I feel the same way. It's like, my gosh, how the heck did this happen?
In some ways, having his home chosen for the 1990 blockbuster film felt a little like fate. In 1983, John Abenshine and his then wife lived down the street from where 16 Candles was filming in Evanston, and they connected with a location scout. Years later, now living in Winnetka, their doorbell rang.
She said that she was scouting around the neighborhood for a home that might work for Uncle Buck.
It wasn't a fit for that film, but the scout came back to them for Home Alone, and they agreed.
We lived here during the filming. We were able to create our own apartment within the home. We had a second floor master bedroom.
It was a memorable 5 months, to say the least, but no one could predict the fandom that would follow once the movie was released.
We're watching TV, and I noticed a nose pressed up against the glass of the family room, which is the front of the house. So I ran outside, and the place, people were all over the lawn. There were cars lined up and down the street. I thought, okay, this is just a temporary phenomenon.
Finally got to see it. We feel good now.
It was not temporary. The fan visits and the photos became a part of the Abenshines' daily lives.
This right here is very normal.
Very normal.
Almost 35 years later, this home averages about 400 visitors every day. And around the holidays, that number grows to thousands.
You guys are from California?
California.
This is the original owner of the home.
Yeah, welcome. Wow. Yeah.
So you sold your home. Did you miss it?
Yes, absolutely. Who wouldn't?
In 2012, John said goodbye to what he calls the gift of a lifetime. And after a decade away from the fanfare, he's writing about it.
The book is called Home But Alone No More. And because, truthfully, I was alone no more. And it really recounts the whole history of how the home was selected. What it was like to live here, and to get to know cast and crew.
Don't worry, Marv, I'll get him for you.
At a personal level, they became almost like family after a point.
So in the video, video there, you probably saw how the front door and the windows are boarded up. Well, there's a new owner. This owner is restoring the home to be exactly how it was when John lived there and when the movie was filmed in 1990. I did get to go. Isn't that great? I did get to go inside because it's under construction. I can't share any details, but NBC5 was promised a full tour when the home is, back restored to its glory.
Okay, Alex, so I think that's a nice little slice of life story, is the way that small little events can change your life forever. I think that encapsulates that type of situation.
I'm waiting for the homicide that followed or whatever.
Alex, you're so cynical. You're so cynical. I can't believe that that's where your mind goes. Although in this instance, I might have to, I might have to honor your request here. Man who owned Home Alone house at time of filming found dead days after child porn charges filed. The man who owned the Winnetka house where Home Alone was filmed at the time the movie was made was found dead days after being charged with multiple felonies for child sex abuse materials. John Abenshine, 79, of Lake Forest, was arrested on April 16th and charged with 7 counts of possessing child sex abuse materials. Lake Forest police said multiple cyber tips led to an online account allegedly associated with Abenshine that was used in the possession, manufacture, and distribution of child sex abuse material. Abenshine wrote a memoir about owning the Home Alone house and how it changed his life. Abenshine appeared in court to face charges last week and was released with conditions. The Lake County, Illinois Coroner's Office said that on Wednesday evening, they were notified of a body found in the Lake Forest Open Lands, Derwin Marr Nature Preserve by police. The body was identified as Abenshine. The coroner and preliminary autopsy results show he died of asphyxia in a manner consistent with being self-inflicted. An investigation into the circumstances of the death by Lake Forest Police and Lake County Coroner's Office is ongoing. Now, Alex, that's not in the memoir, though, so you can still purchase the memoir and not have to understand this unfortunate circumstance that occurred later in life. You get to still take joy in what it was like to have owned that home.
Imagine writing a memoir and leaving out some of the most shocking details about yourself. What are you even doing?
We don't know from these details when he started potentially allegedly consuming such and producing such materials. So we don't know. We don't know that we don't know everything. Yeah. So anyway, your cynicism, I guess, in that circumstance paid off, Alex. I don't know what I've done to you to make my setup so.
Well, I mean, you were just going a little too hard on the paint. My gator dar is getting honed with all these episodes.
All right. Well, moving forward, we got a couple other small things here. A story about a Home Depot exploit, a Home Depot sort of scam scheme that was being perpetrated by one of the employees.
A manager at a Home Depot in Miami was impressing the bosses by exceeding his sales goals, but investigators uncovered those numbers were too good to be true and realized he was actually leading a sophisticated scheme to defraud his employer. NBC6 reporter Christian Colon explains how police say Home Depot lost over $4 million.
He was issuing discounts to different companies.
It was a sophisticated scheme that lasted more than 2 years. According to records, Home Depot store manager Mauricio Jimenez sold millions of dollars worth of bulk merchandise, items like power tools and garbage disposals, at steep discounts to select businesses.
So he was selling items half off to these core customers repeatedly.
Because of his position, Jimenez had the authority to approve major pricing adjustments, but records show he went far beyond what was allowed, significantly reducing prices.
So those discounts cost the company over $4 million, and by increasing his sales using those discounts, he was compensated with larger bonuses.
Records show the large volume transactions boosted store sales, earning Jimenez substantial performance bonuses. But once the company uncovered the scheme, they realized the deep discounts cost them more than $4 million. And Jimenez's attorney says there's no proof he personally benefited from the scheme. As for Jimenez himself, he was granted a bond and will be allowed to get out of jail. In Miami, Christian Colon, NBC 6 News.
Now, Alex, if you remember, that type of scheme was really just something that the people at Enron used to do in large quantities. So, I mean, really, when you think about it, he hasn't done that much wrong, right?
Go on. Where are you?
Enron was one of the largest companies in the country, so in the world, I believe, even at some point. So, you know, if that's what success looks like, the eventual demise is just an unfortunate consequence. But, you know, he didn't bring down Home Depot. They were still afloat.
Mm-hmm. Of course. In fact, you could say that he did what they wanted him to do according to the incentive and rule structure they created. It's unclear what he did wrong, even.
That's exactly. Thank you for getting on board with that, Alex. I mean, listen. His incentive structure was stacked up to encourage this type of behavior because, as you well know, Alex, things are getting tight for people out there. The economy is not in the complete crapper, but it is not doing too well. The war in Iran has caused gas prices to go up in some areas well above $5 a gallon, which is putting a lot of stress on the average person's ability to consume, you know, their normal goods and services, such as eggs at the grocery store.
It can't be true, Gator. It's not possible. The president himself said that the straits were open and the war is over.
Oh.
I don't know what you're reading.
I apologize. I do my show prep starting typically Wednesday, but that's a slower part of it. And then I do most of it, the bulk of it, Friday and Saturday. Perhaps I didn't catch up on the latest.
This was weeks ago.
Weeks ago? Oh, geez.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes,
but I thought
we've won. The war is over. They don't have a command structure and the streets are open. And all you need to do is have a little bit of carriage and go through.
But I believe that was superseded by an announcement 5 minutes later. So
I must have missed that.
Yeah. You gotta. It's quick. It's a quick update system. You got to refresh your screen every few minutes just to make sure that you get the latest reversal.
The latest truth.
On that.
You see, yes. I was stuck in an old truth, and now there's a new truth. That must be it.
Alex, come on.
But coming back to this person, first of all, have we examined whether he was just following the government's dictates to lower prices and therefore help with inflation?
Well, he'll just be accused of malicious compliance at that point.
Malicious compliance? Okay. Secondly, I mean, you know what? You know this, but I think it's interesting to cover it. And I do have a question that I've not been able to answer, right? So this is a violation of what is called Goodhart's Law. Okay. Sometimes people call it the Cobra effect, but it's the same idea. Basically, the idea. I'll say the Cobra effect story because it's hard to forget really once you hear it. But apparently, the British in India had a reward for bringing in dead cobras because they wanted to sort of thin out the herd. There was a lot of cobras in whatever area had enacted this reward. And they indeed started getting quite a few dead cobras and had to pay out quite a few rewards. At some point, they realized that the locals were actually breeding them in order to get dead cobras. So, of course, they did what any sane person would do, and they stopped the reward system, at which point the locals just released the population, since there was no reason to hold them any longer.
We're gonna put a pin on that because that's also sort of reminiscent of a news story that occurred this week that it's very analogous to a situation, but it's going to be after this very next short one because the economy, as I was saying, is a little bit tight for people, so it's causing people to make hard choices in life.
Many Americans aren't drinking at all, while those who still like a cocktail but would like to avoid the rising costs are returning to a pastime from their younger years. pre-gaming. According to the Wall Street Journal, it's back in a big way, downing an extra drink at home to save when you're out. One survey found about a third of adults now do it.
Now, Alex, I'm not too poor off when it comes to income. I have a nice income. I'm able to afford most things, but even I can feel the pinch when gas prices get so high and grocery prices get so high. All of those things can affect me too, even though I live rather comfortably. So in full disclosure, I absolutely pre-gamed the hell out of this show.
Look,
and
I am. I have one piece of advice for you.
Lit
and our
as
audience.
fuck, as the kids say.
Even though you can light it up, please do not drink the gasoline. A, it's expensive. B, it's not going to go well for you.
Well, Alex, hang on. Have you done a comparative sort of test to determine the price to fucked up ratio that you get between alcohol and gasoline? Because you don't have to drink the gasoline. You can just huff it. You can just huff the fumes. And I think
you're going to have to define fucked up for me. We can't just go.
Well, there are some synonyms.
We're not going to be able to handwave this one.
Perhaps might help, like crunk, tore off your ass as a phrase, as synonym.
Well, the person I heard that drank gasoline had their entire esophagus destroyed. So again, off your ass.
Again, huffing is always a choice. Huffing is always a choice, sir. Right?
Yes.
Now, we had the pin on your snake story here, and I think that is going to follow up nicely and sort of relate to this latest situation. Federal grand jury charges Southern Poverty Law Center for wire fraud, false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. A grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama today returned an indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 11 counts of wire fraud, false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. The United States Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Alabama Northern Division filed 2 forfeiture actions to recover alleged proceeds of the organization's fraud scheme. The Federal Bureau of Investigation investigated this case with assistance from the Internal Revenue Service's criminal investigation. Quote, "The SPLC is manufacturing racism to justify its existence," said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. "Using donor money to allegedly profit off Klansmen cannot go unchecked. This Department of Justice will hold the SPLC and every other fraudulent organization operating with the same deceptive playbook accountable. No entity is above the law." Quote, "The SPLC allegedly engaged in a massive fraud operation to deceive their donors, enrich themselves, and hide their deceptive operations from the public," said FBI Director Kash Patel. "They lied to their donors, vowing to dismantle violent extremist groups, and actually turned around and paid the leaders of these very extremist groups, even utilizing the funds to have these groups facilitate the commission of state and federal crimes. That is illegal, and this is an ongoing investigation against all individuals involved." The SPLC is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Montgomery, Alabama, whose mission, according to its website during the relevant time period, was to be a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. According to the indictment, starting in the 1980s, the SPLC began operating a covert network of individuals who were either associated with violent and extremist groups, such as the Ku Klux Klan, or who had infiltrated violent extremist groups at the SPLC's direction. Unbeknownst to donors, some of their donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizations of racist groups. At the same time, the SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. Quote, "Donors gave their money believing they were supporting the fight against violent extremism," said Acting United States Attorney General Kevin Davidson. As alleged, the SPLC instead diverted a portion of those funds to benefit individuals and groups they claim to oppose. That kind of deception undermines the public trust in social cohesion. Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in donated funds to individuals who are associated with various violent extremist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, Unite the Right, National Alliance, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, National Socialist Party of America, an American front. According to the indictment, the objective of the scheme and artifice was to obtain money via donations through materially false representations and omissions about what the donated funds would be used for. In order to covertly pay the individuals, the SPLC opened bank accounts connected to a series of fictitious entities. The covert nature of the accounts allowed the SPLC to disguise the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the fraudulently obtained donated money the SPLC paid the individuals. In order to keep the scheme going, the SPLC made a series of false statements related to the operation of the accounts. A conviction will result in the forfeiture of financial gains from the alleged illegal activities. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel made the announcement in Washington. The details contained in the civil forfeiture complaint are allegations only. So, Alex, I think, that's a situation that sort of is expected, at least not in part, where you and I have pointed out many, many times in the past that once an organization is created and has a set purpose, if that purpose goes away, the organization does not decide that it's no longer necessary and dissolve. It will continue and will find ways to continue in order to keep its existence ongoing. So an organization does behave like an organism and seek to preserve its life.
Yep. Well, I mean, we must say, as annoying as it is, that these are allegations, and we don't have, we don't have the full, defense from the SPLC. In general, they do tend to be the worst. So I find this completely plausible, but, just in general, for decorum, I will say, what follows is really conditional on the allegations being in substance correct.
Well, the SPLC recently had the Turning Point USA on its list of extremist organizations just prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Look, while you might disagree with some of the people on the list, you might, for example, agree with others. So, for instance, they've had Sam Harris on their list.
Well, now listen, SPLC is combating hate and not necessarily general idiocy, stupidity, arrogance. I don't know if that's particularly good. And it also sort of hurts a point I was just about to make about how wonderful of an institution the SPLC was, because it, along with Media Matters, sort of made someone on the right side of the aisle aware that they had achieved some sort of significance in the public sphere if they became part of their ire. So if you appeared on the SPLC's lists or Media Matters target lists, you had known that you had done something important in life to achieve it. Because
they made it, yes.
Yes, but now that I know Sam Harris apparently was targeted by the SPLC, now it's like, okay, well, I guess the signal was broken already, so it could go.
I think he wasn't on the list, but he was on a list, if I remember correctly.
Well, Alex, when you say Sam Harris 3 times, unfortunately on this program, we do have to bring him up. Okay, it's like Beetlejuice. And I have to warn you that unless we run out of material shortly, there is a Gator Annoys Alex segment featuring.
I mean, he's recently had Ben Shapiro on his show. That's a twofer, right?
Well, that is not what we will be covering. So,
okay.
However, Alex, at the end of last episode, do you remember what we discussed?
Oh, yes. In whole or in part.
Okay. Well, we actually have an update. So we are going to do a story here now that many of the listeners are going to be familiar with. But if you are not familiar with this show or what we've been covering, I will give you an introduction to this story. This story is about a young singer named David Anthony Burke, who goes by the stage name D4VD, pronounced David, but spelt D4VD. And D4VD is a Houston-born singer-songwriter who rose to prominence in the early 2020s after uploading music online, initially recording tracks on his phone and distributing them through platforms like YouTube and TikTok. He broke out with the viral hit Romantic Homicide, which gained massive traction on streaming platforms and pushed him into the mainstream. His sound blends lo-fi production with alternative R&B and indie influences, and he quickly built a large Gen Z audience online. By 2023 and 2024, he had signed with a major label and was charting internationally. He was seen as one of the more promising young artists to emerge from the internet music scene, especially notable for how quickly he went from bedroom recordings to global recognition. In September 2025, a Tesla that had been sitting impounded in Los Angeles was flagged by workers because of a strong odor. When authorities inspected it, they found human remains inside. It was later learned the body had been dismembered, likely in order to ensure it fit inside the Tesla. That vehicle was registered to D4VD. The remains were later identified as 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who had been reported missing back in April of 2024, meaning her disappearance had gone unsolved for over a year before the discovery. It has been reasonably understood that D4VD, at the time an adult, was having an inappropriate sexual relationship with underage Celeste Rivas Hernandez prior to her going missing. Over time, updates have included details such as chainsaw, burn cage found in D4VD's Hollywood Hills home. We've continued here on this show to follow the story as updates trickled out. None of the updates ever really pointed in a direction other than D4VD and the reasons to suspect D4VD being at least involved, if not the main person of interest, and that only grew over time. Despite many months of grand jury testimony existing, no indictments ever came through. Last week, on this dumb week, there had been an arrest of singer D4VD, but still no charges. However, Monday, that changed.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Hochman. I'm the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. With me up here is Los Angeles Police Department Chief Jim McDonnell. Also at this podium on the DA's side are the Assistant District Attorney Maria Ramirez, who oversees our special operations. We have John McKinney, who is our Director of Specialized Prosecutions. The Assistant Head Deputy District Attorney is Habib Balian of the Major Crimes Division. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman of the Major Crimes Division will be the lead prosecutor on this case. From the Los Angeles Police Department, we also have Captain Scott Williams, who's the commanding officer of LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, the Chief of Detectives, Alan Hamilton, the Director of Specialized Prosecutions, Mike Rimkunis, and the LAPD detectives on this case, Josh Byers and Corey Farrell. Today, I am announcing the charges against David Anthony Burke, the musician known as David, spelled D4VD, in connection with the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time. These charges include the most serious charges that a DA's office can bring. That is first-degree murder with special circumstances. The special circumstances being lying in wait, committing this crime for financial gain, or murdering a witness in an investigation. These special circumstances carry with it, along with the first-degree murder charge, a maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. The determination on whether or not the District Attorney's Office will seek the death penalty will be made at a later time. Before I get into the actual charges, and there are additional charges against Mr. Burke, including continuous sexual acts, lewd and lascivious sexual acts with an individual under 14 years old, and mutilating a human remains of a body. Before I get into the description of these charges and their seriousness, I want to look at this as a parent. I am a parent of 3 children, and a parent's nightmare is a situation where your daughter goes out one night and never comes back. As we will show in a court of law, and what I also want to make sure about that the understanding of these charges is clear, is my description of these charges is not evidence that we are going to present in court. These charges, in fact, will not be evidence in the court. Evidence will be the witness testimony, the documents, and different types of admissible testimony that we will admit into court in the prosecution, and if it leads to the eventual trial of Mr. Burke, to convince a jury of 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that each and every one of these charges is true, as well as the special allegations and circumstances that have been alleged. Now, back to this being a parent's nightmare. On April 23rd, 2025, as been alleged by the complaint, Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time, went to Mr. Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills. She was never heard from again. On September 8th, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, Miss Celeste's remains, her dismembered and decomposed remains, were found in 2 bags inside of a front trunk of a car registered to Mr. Burke. Thereafter began an investigation. The investigation was to determine who killed, who murdered Celeste months and months before. That investigation was carried out in unison and in partnership between the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division and the District Attorney's Office. At every point in the investigation, through the arrest and the filing of charges, the LAPD and the District Attorney's Office have worked in lockstep. There's been no disagreements amongst these entities in deciding how to proceed with this case, ultimately leading to these charges today. So what you have as well with these charges is that, again, there are 3 sets of charges that have been brought. The first-degree murder with special circumstances, and again, those special circumstances are lying in wait. That Celeste went to Mr. Burke's home on the night of April 23rd, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, at his invitation, and again, was not heard from again. The second is a special circumstance being that this murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for Mr. Burke to maintain his very lucrative musical career that Celeste was threatening on that particular night. The third charge, in addition to lying in wait and for financial gain, is murdering a witness to an investigation. In this particular case, as the evidence will come out in court, the witness to the investigation was Celeste. And the investigation was into the lewd and lascivious sexual acts committed by Mr. Burke that is the subject of count 2 of this complaint with Celeste while she was under 14 years old. I had the chance to meet with some of the family members of Celeste, and their grief is incalculable as to what happened to their daughter. What they have demanded, what we have assured them that the District Attorney's Office working with LAPD would give them is the proof beyond a reasonable doubt on who killed their daughter, on how their daughter was killed, when their daughter was killed, and bring that killer to justice. That killer that we have now charged is David Anthony Burke.
So there you go, Alex. We have charges that are actually now filed finally against D4VD, something we have been wondering when it was going to actually happen this entire time. Alex, your thoughts on that announcement?
Well, I mean, it sheds a lot of light, especially the part where the motive was discussed. It seems that, I don't know if she, by her existence or by her cooperation with authorities, or in the form of, a more, let's say he was preparing to, tell her to go, and she was like, I'm going to tell everybody or whatever, but somehow appeared to have been threatening his career, which he tried to silence her, I suppose, in that way. Though, again, I hope we somehow learn how she ended up in the car, because, I mean, even the most mentally challenged murderer knows to bury a person instead of whatever it was he did. That part has to it's still unexplained, but at least we have cause and effect sort of situation that led at least to her death. The events afterwards I'm still baffled about, but at least some part of the story now makes a little bit more sense. Dark as it is.
It raises a few questions for me. Time will ultimately clear them up or make them just more confusing, at least as far as why they thought that this would work if it goes a particular way. But they're talking about her being a witness, and if there was an active investigation, the way that it was phrased suggests, but doesn't necessarily indicate, that she was a witness in the investigation of a crime that he perpetrated against her, being the underage sex. And not that there was an additional sort of crime that they were investigated that she happened to be a witness on. Like, so you can have an investigation, you might have 10 different witnesses, all talking about it, and of which she was one. But in the case where it was an investigation about the very crimes that she was a participant in, or at least would have been the alleged victim of, would have been statutory rape or whatever it would be there. She's the only and prime witness. So in the circumstance that it would be that type of investigation, an investigation surrounding the statutory rape of herself, when your primary witness disappears, there is somewhat of a place you should start your investigation of the disappearance that should have led to more discovery a little bit earlier than finding the car in the impound lot.
You're right. Yes, that is a big question for me, especially because, I mean, was there a missing persons report? Was her, we haven't heard, like, from her family's point of view, like, when did the last see her? Did she say she was?
Well, no. So there was a missing persons report. So in this story, the history of the story, Celeste was a known missing person for about a year before the discovery of the body. Wow. So she was an active missing persons report in advance of this. And from the family's understanding, they only knew that she was dating someone named David. But it's my understanding that they did not know it was D4VD specifically.
David, yes.
Yeah. Yes. The definite article David. So the family itself was a little bit unaware of who it was. But if you have a witness, now perhaps this is something that would resolve it. Perhaps they are retroactively trying to use this additional witness thing as an attempt to get an additional charge or a stronger charge on the books. However, there was no active investigation, but because they were in a relationship, she would have been a witness in an investigation. Therefore, they might be attempting to do that.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
So that's one way of resolving it. Now, again, if they choose that way to do it, I'm not an attorney, but I have seen a lot of things. So there's a situation where if it doesn't fit the law, they might not be able to get that charge. It might be tossed out by the courts or something like that because it doesn't specifically apply. It might be that the law was written. There has to be an actual investigation going on for a person to be considered a witness, not just if you knew that there was an investigation to do, you would have made her a witness. I'm not sure. Although maybe the law would apply to someone who says, I'm going to rat you out, and then you kill them. That maybe the law is written that way. I'm not sure, but those are the questions I have so far.
The key element, I think you're probably right, but the key element is if he killed her. If he killed her, it doesn't matter why. I mean, it could, I don't know, maybe if there's elements of
it matters
insanity,
why from the number of charges that you can have put on you, and each of those charges winds up having a a penalty component. So if you want to accumulate penalties of years and things like that, you want as many charges as possible.
I would explore whether they're trying to cross a threshold to a death penalty or something like that. Because it does seem like they are reaching a little bit. Perhaps because they really think that this guy should go away for a long time, beyond what the default the system would do. Yeah, it did seem a little bit complicated to say that it was for personal benefit, and he was silencing a potential witness or whatever. It's like statutory rape and murder is pretty bad to start with.
Because a personal benefit sort of scenario to the average person sounds like something like I killed you for the insurance money, right? Like that's the personal benefit, or the inheritance, right? That's where I'm going to actually stand personal gain. Preventing a monetary loss due to reputational harm or something like that sounds like a distortion. In the my immediate reaction, of course, we are all reacting on this in sort of a naive way. I don't know the official California laws to be able to comment. I will possibly go and review them this week to try to see if it enhances my understanding. But this is all off the cuff sort of reaction. But that would be my interpretation of what a monetary benefit would normally be. And I agree with your sort of analysis that some of the things they're doing sound stretches based on what we know.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out. It does seem like you were saying that there's some complication also in bringing the charges. So maybe some of the baroque nature of the charges has to do with them sort of, hula hooping something complicated on the procedural side.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the additional questions that I have off of that just there is, we know that there were many witnesses that were brought in to testify in these grand juries that they had procured prior to. Now, none of the grand juries issued an indictment, meaning that none of the grand juries were responsible for charging these crimes. This was all done on what they say probable cause, which is when the police arrested them on Friday. They had some piece of evidence that allowed them to enact that arrest. Then the charges came from the DA directly on Monday, but it wasn't a grand jury. However, there were grand juries being held and many witnesses being brought in, and a lot of friends. One of them who had to be brought in from out of state because he fled the grand jury. And I'm assuming, of course, that we are dealing with multiple people involved in the crime. However, at the moment, David Anthony Burke is the only one being charged, which is suggestive of deals being cut for cooperation in order to get what they, is the main bad guy.
Exactly.
And so the questions I would have are, when the body was, put in the car, was dismembered and things like that. Was it a group of people who were assisting, who are now going to be testifying that somehow that they were under duress or whatever, that he was threatening them, and if they didn't cooperate with this, then, because otherwise there's several people who should be charged in addition, I would believe, as opposed to just one person, unless they're somehow getting a really sweetheart deal for this horrendous crime in order to testify against and make an example of.
Presumably even being aware of this and not saying anything is itself somehow some kind of offense, isn't it?
Well, the David officially pled not guilty to the charges because there was an arraignment later in the week. And his attorneys, of course, are not going to go, our client's guilty. Their job is to say our client's not guilty. However, I think that the idea our client is not guilty still lends to several questions that they're going to be unable to answer. Like, okay, so your client's not guilty. Did he not notice that his car and girlfriend were missing? Did he not?
No, you see, he thought his girlfriend stole his car.
Was he not curious about this? The woman that he wrote love songs to, he wasn't worried that she had gone missing and that she was actually a publicly, notified missing person.
When you say love songs,
it wasn't romantic homicide. It was not romantic homicide. He actually wrote a different song about a woman named Celeste and how much he loved her. So to my knowledge, that one did not involve homicide.
So you're saying these two things are unrelated? The fact that was his hit.
Yes. According to
involved in this situation.
Well, let's say that the romantic homicide was written prior to these events, and so it might have been foreshadowing, but it wasn't a confession. It was. So there's that.
Anyway.
Now there was a hearing where he pled not guilty, and Law and Crime Network did have someone in the court that day to do reporting, and I'm going to play a few clips from that to get a sense of additional details that we did not get from that DA statement.
So good to see you, Dina. Thanks for taking the time. First of all, I need you to clarify what this hearing was, because I think a lot of us thought this was going to be the preliminary hearing. We thought that was on the calendar. That was not the case, even though they did talk about when the preliminary hearing is going to be scheduled, right?
Absolutely. It was calendared as a preliminary hearing, but the judge at the outset said, I'm sure that's not actually going to start today. Let's talk about it. And that's exactly what they did, scheduling it, and most importantly, talking about the discovery, the transferring of what seems to be a mountain of evidence from the prosecution to the defense and the logistics of how that's going to happen.
And I want to get into that because quite the headline, what was allegedly found on either David's phone or his devices, which we'll get to. But the preliminary hearing is scheduled for next week, right? And is this because there's just, like you said, there's so much evidence to go through, there's so much data to go through?
Well, this is significant. They have not waived their right to a speedy preliminary hearing. The very last day it could be under law was May 4th. But the judge said, I don't like to schedule it that last day because there could be unexpected circumstances just with the court system in general. So they have scheduled it for May 1st. But significantly, they will all be back in front of the judge the afternoon of April 29th in order for the defense to determine whether or not the prosecution has handed over enough evidence where they think they can properly defend their client at the hearing. The judge making a point that although statutory law requires the prosecution to hand over everything prior to trial, they are not required to do that for a preliminary hearing. They just have to hand over sufficient evidence that is most favorable to the defendant in order to prove probable cause. So that afternoon of April 29th, the defense will determine if they think they have enough evidence to continue with this speedy preliminary hearing.
Dina, let me ask you this. The autopsy report that came out yesterday, is that a reason why we didn't have a preliminary hearing today? Did they talk about that? Because there's a lot in that report. That's the official cause of death. We know the defense has said that David is not the cause of death. Did that come up today?
That did not come up. As they really spoke about the fact that they have a wide range of evidence that the defense has not getting. Specifically, they actually highlighted the fact that they have this significant amount of child pornography on his iPhone, but they did not get into the specifics of the medical examiner's report.
Okay, so talk to me about the big bombshell. Apparently they found what, or allegedly found what, on David's devices?
So she said the words, the prosecution said, a significant amount of child pornography. And she raised this saying it is going to be different. You cannot hand over that type of evidence to the defense as you would the rest of the evidence. The defense has to instead have somebody, a counsel or an expert, go to the county and actually look at a determined computer to look at this because of the sensitive nature of that evidence. The prosecution also highlighting the amount of this evidence and the evidence on the data and the cell phone in general, because because of the difficulty and how long it takes to hand and transfer over this kind of amount of evidence.
Okay, put your legal cap on. Are we talking potential federal charges? You and I both know that if someone is caught with allegedly child sexual abuse material on their devices, that could be federal charges.
That's a really great point, and it's very possible federal charges may come. At this point, though, it definitely is relevant and probative to one of the three charges. There are three charges against him: murder, continuous child sex abuse, and mutilation of a corpse. So this specific child pornography evidence is definitely going to be used by prosecution for that continuous child sexual abuse. But whether or not the federal prosecutors decide to add charges, we will wait and see.
Just want to clarify, any idea who was portrayed in these, this footage, these videos, this data on his phone? Is it Celeste? Is it someone else? Did prosecutors acknowledge that? And let me be clear, allegedly on his phone. Did they say the identity of this person or persons?
They did not say the identity, but even that specific phrase, the press, there was a ton of press in the courtroom. Everybody had their laptops out taking notes, and you just heard the chatter of the typing. Just the phrase significant amount of child pornography was enough to raise flags about what may become in this trial.
Now, Alex, I have one little quibble there, because in my household, one piece of child pornography is a significant amount of child pornography on a device. So I don't know exactly the threshold above one where it's in their world. It goes from insignificant to significant.
It could have been a negligible amount, like an epsilon amount. I don't know.
Just like... for me, everything above zero it winds up being significant. I'm not. I don't think you get a little bit just as a treat occasionally. It's like there's a.
Yeah, it's like a pregnancy, really. You can't do it in a small amount.
So, any thoughts on the information contained inside of there? I'm going to assume that at least a portion of the material being called child pornography is going to be Celeste related. That it's
and to the degree that it's boyfriend girlfriend stuff, it is slightly different to what you might. Contextually, right, to what you might like put on a website or somewhere and whatever. This all, by the way, does connect to me with something else, which is an alternative hypothesis is starting to gel for me, which is, let's say there was an accident and she died accidentally, potentially doing, stuff they shouldn't be doing, but these people do not seem to have everything figured out, let's just say. If this turned out to be the case, then you can sort of see the chaotic situation where they, did what they did, stuffed it in the car and then abandoned the car to be towed or whatever. I think that actually starts to make a little bit more sense for me.
Now, when you say accident, does crime of passion become included in?
Precisely. Not intended. I mean, it could be that they were, playing choking or whatever, crazy shit people shouldn't do, but there you go. Mm-hmm. And, she didn't just pass out, she passed away. And then, he panics and does a further stupid thing. That story holds together for me.
Now, a detail that was not included in the audio there was that the autopsy report declared her cause of death as being 2 stab wounds into the chest. So their prosecution is going to rule out sexual asphyxiation gone awry.
Right. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, that turn of events fits a little bit better than this, which is premeditated idiocy, for lack of a better term.
So the prosecution is not saying they're going to be able to prove it, but the prosecution's angle is that it was premeditated and that he, as the turn of phrase, lying in wait for her in order to perpetrate the crime. So I guess we'll have to see what they show in trial for that allegation there. But that concludes our update on D4VD.
D4 Vendetta.
It's been
Yes.
Good. See, I got it much faster this time, sir. I just have to move my hand right over to the button. Now, before we get to the White House press dinner shooting event, okay, we have to talk about the more important violent act that occurred in the sister party that was being held by Substack at the same time last night. Are you aware of the more important events?
I am not.
Okay. So Tim Rice on Twitter last night posted, a prominent leftist writer being escorted out of the Substack party, hurling invective at staffers. Police were almost involved. Are you ready, Alex?
What did Hassan do again?
Nathan Brand quote tweeted and said, not sure what to do with this information. But yeah, Michael Tracy started screaming at Julie K. Brown from the Miami Herald about Epstein at a Substack party. Jim Acosta got involved, threatening to fight Michael Tracy outside.
No.
Michael Tracy then tweeted, Jim Acosta threatened to fight me tonight at the Substack party. See, I bring the goods, Alex. I bring all
I for one, am on the side of Acosta on this one.
Okay. Well, Mediaite reports, quote, pussy, Michael Tracy waits outside of hotel to fight Jim Acosta. Independent political commentators Michael Tracy and Jim Acosta almost came to blows on Saturday after, according to Tracy, the ex-CNN host threatened to fight him at the Substack party for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. After first making note of Acosta's threat, Tracy went on to provide more context in a pair of tweets that read, Jim screamed at me, quote, let's go outside. And I replied, okay, Jim, let's go. And then he had the security do his dirty work instead. Pussy, at Jim Acosta. And yes, he ultimately wanted to fight me over Epstein shit. I wouldn't have fought him if security didn't intervene. I would have fought him if security didn't intervene. Tracy has emerged as an outspoken critic of various conspiracy theories and accusations pertaining to late sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein and his associates, while Acosta, a famed detractor of President Donald Trump, has played them up. After his confrontation with Acosta at the Substack party, Tracy invited him to meet outside of a Washington, D.C. Hampton Inn to finish what he had started. Quote, still have no idea whatever went on with Trump tonight. Good, Michael Tracy, good. Just know that Jim Acosta threw a fucking hissy fit. Pussy, Jim, meet me in front of the Hampton Inn. Wrote Tracy in another post before providing the address of the hotel. He followed that up with yet another tweet that included a picture of the Hampton Inn and the caption, Jim, I'm literally waiting for you right now, you piece of shit. For his part, Acosta responded only to Tracy's original tweet with the rejoinder, quote, that's because you are trash, on Saturday night, but furnished his own version of the event Saturday morning. Quote, we saw what you did at the Substack party. You were bullying Julie, whatever her name was, it's just an at symbol, JKB journalist, in a menacing way and would not let her walk away from you. Your behavior. Probably. Your behavior was shameful and ugly, wrote Acosta on X. So yes, I stepped in, as did several other people, including security, to escort Brown away from you. The reporter, Acosta accused Tracy of harassing the Miami Herald's Julie K. Brown, thanked all the kind people and security guards who helped me tonight. Quote, no one should give someone a platform to attack and harass people, even if you disagree with them, she added. Brown later added, Acosta was a true gentleman who came to my aid last night after Tracy began screaming and blocking me from trying to leave the event. Acosta and several other men had to stand in his way to stop him from following me. He had been harassing Epstein's victims for a long time, even to the point of showing up at Virginia's vigil yesterday. So I just wanted to make sure, Alex, that you were aware of the more significant violent encounter at the sister party to the White House press conference dinner, and so that you weren't distracted by the smoke and mirrors that was an attempted presidential assassination.
Yes, the attempted attempt. So what the fuck is going on with Tracy? Like, there is something wrong with this guy. I mean, everybody knows that much, but like on a very different plane. I guess it's like maybe it's not too dissimilar. I'm speculating here, but what else can we do? To the James Lindsay affliction, where he just gets into your topic so much, you just end up, I don't know, like shouting at everybody to get off your lawn. But like, this is getting in people's faces actively, which I don't think Lindsay does, to his credit. Such as it is, you know what I mean? Like, this is just, I mean, he is, have you ever seen him, like, quote unquote, debate anybody? It is a wild experience.
I mean, I've seen him in clips on Piers Morgan, which is just everybody yells at everybody else for an hour show.
Well,
you know,
the thing is, even when he does, even without Piers Morgan there, right? Even without the manufactured outrage, you just see him, you know, even on his own podcast, like bringing people on to debate supposedly about Epstein and just like never answering a question, ever, like just completely going off on his own tangents, never letting anybody finish an answer of their own, and then declaring victory. It is just unthinkable. The only person who was able to nail him down that I've seen, well, there's been a few, but the one that was most convincing was Glenn Greenwald, because obviously Tracy has some level of respect for him, and he was able to just pin him down and get him to say some really embarrassing things for his case. But other than that, it's just this, it's just absolute caveman level of, you know, operation where you just try to, I don't know, like bully your way into a situation where no bullying was required. You know, like they're not attacking you in any way, you know, as far as we know. You know, your own, you know, physical safety is not in danger, yet you are acting like somebody insulted your family. Wild stuff. So I guess, you know, it is surprising. I wouldn't have predicted it per se, but on some level it makes sense. It's just wild.
I thought that I'm glad in some ways that you weren't aware, so that I could be the first to bring this to your attention.
I was not.
Because I need to make sure that I am valuable to you as a human being, and if you hear about everything in advance, my value decreases in the world. What am I? I'm just a recycler.
You are already valuable, Gator, regardless.
Oh, well, thank you.
But you are compounding your value. Here, I don't.
Now, would you perhaps entertain the idea with me? There's been many years for the last, let's say, decade of the YouTube celebrities, the YouTube people getting together and sponsoring events where they will box each other. It's for charity or whatnot. And I'm wondering if you would maybe perhaps join me in recommending that we maybe sponsor a charity boxing event where Michael Tracy and Jim Acosta duke it out for maybe 3 rounds. I don't think that either of them has the stamina to last any more than 3 rounds, and they can be minute-long 3 rounds. But for charity, perhaps, you know, we can even live stream it on X, the Everything app, including where you know, insane quote journalists go to duke it out. We could, I think that event could.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. We'll call it This Dumb Night. You know, it's going to be our nightly show. The beginning. I am still in shock at this, like everything about this. It is. It's wild. Yeah, it's. Is Tracy going to be the first person to be kicked out of Substack?
That's a really hard thing to do, but he might not be invited. He might not be invited to the events going forward. That might be.
But threatening to assault people or challenging people to a fight at a Substack event might do it. You know what I mean?
Well,
surely anything would.
We don't know what Holiday Inn is going to do with him, and whether he's going to be allowed to stay at the Holiday Inn in the near future. He might have to downgrade to a shittier hotel.
Anyway, I am in awe of this arc. It's quite something.
Now that we've covered the real important events, we can get to the distractions out there. You know, the false flags or whatever of maybe or whatever Trump possibly being assassinated for the third time. You know, the smaller things of importance in life here. So we have from NPR. What we know about Cole Allen, suspected White House Correspondents Dinner shooter. Cole Allen, a 31-year-old teacher and engineer from Torrance, California, has been identified as the man suspected of opening fire at the White House Correspondents' Dinner Saturday night, two sources familiar with the matter told NPR. The sources spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. A LinkedIn page that appears to belong to Allen describes him as a mechanical engineer and computer scientist by degree, independent game developer by experience, teacher by birth. It also says he got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Caltech in 2017 and a master's degree in computer science from California State University, Dominguez Hills last May. According to the LinkedIn page, Allen worked as a part-time teacher at C2 Education, a tutoring service that offers testing prep for high school students. He received a Teacher of the Month award at the company in December 2024. A 17-year-old Jason was one of the students Allen tutored. He said that in a few sessions he had with him, he was a good teacher and called him a smart guy. NPR is identifying Jason only by his first name because he's a minor. You wouldn't expect him to be plotting some crazy evil plan to kill the president, Jason said. He was just quirky because he was just a really smart guy. In addition to teaching, Allen was also self-employed video game developer. He designed an online game called Bodrum, which was released on the online gaming platform Steam in 2018. A White House official told NPR Allen sent his family members what the White House is calling a manifesto minutes before the incident took place at the Hilton Hotel. The document states that Allen wanted to target administration officials, the White House said. The official, who was not authorized to speak publicly, said Allen's brother notified the police of the document. NPR has not seen any of the writings independently. The White House official also said the Secret Service and Montgomery County Police spoke with Allen's sister. In that interview, Allen's sister said that her brother had a tendency to make radical statements, and his rhetoric constantly referenced a plan to do something to fix the issues with the world today. She also said he attended a No Kings protest in California and was part of a group called the Wide Awakes, a network of activists dedicated to social justice issues that bears the same name as the 1860s abolitionist youth movement. Allen's sister also said Allen purchased 2 handguns and a shotgun and kept them stored at his parents' home. The parents were unaware that the firearms were being stored there. In October 2024, Allen donated $25 to fundraising platform Act Blue that was earmarked for Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, according to Federal Elections Commission records. Allen will be arraigned in federal court on Monday. He is being charged with using a firearm during a crime of violence and with assault of a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro said additional charges are expected. Now, we do have the manifesto that has been shared. I got this from the New York Post. Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for Most Wanted. I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had a personal emergency. By the time anyone reads this, I probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, but can hardly call that not a self-inflicted status. I apologize to all of the people I traveled next to, all the workers who handled my luggage, and all the other non-targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who was abused and or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all who may still suffer, regardless of my success or failure. I don't expect forgiveness, but if I could have seen any other way to get this close, I would have taken it. Again, my sincere apologies. On to why I did this. I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me. I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Well, to be completely honest, I was no longer willing a long time ago, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. While I'm discussing this, I also go over my expected rules of engagement, probably in a terrible format, but I'm not military, so too bad. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel, they are targets, prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service. They are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible. AKA, I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. Hotel security. Not targets if at all possible, AKA unless they shoot at me. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be using buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls. I would still go through most everyone here to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary, on the basis that most people choose to attend a speech by a pedophile, rapist, and traitor, and are thus complicit. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. Some rebuttals to objections. Objection 1. As a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. Rebuttal. Turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I'm not the person raped in a detention camp. I'm not the fisherman executed without trial. I'm not a school kid blown up or a child starved or a teenage girl abused by the many criminals in this administration. Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It's complicity in the oppressor's crimes. So there you have it, Alex. There's the shooter's manifesto. And as far as I'm aware, only one Secret Service agent with a vest was shot, and the vest protected them from any significant damage to my knowledge. And the perpetrator was arrested, to also my knowledge, without any harm to his person.
I'm afraid this guy's gonna get off easy when his lawyers claim that he was infected with terminal radiditis. And I mean, who's gonna challenge that diagnosis?
Well, Reddit might throw in a couple attorneys there. They might object to that. I mean,
yes.
Now,
but they will be exempt for obvious reasons.
Now, Alex, would you say that this event was a little bit stochastic in nature? That there was a little bit of lone wolf randomness to this act. That it wasn't necessarily something that people should be directly expecting, so to speak?
Well, I mean, given his Persian first and last name and his adherence to Shia Islam, I expect he's been attributed already to Islamic Republic.
No, I've heard nothing along those lines, sir.
That's
nothing
very
along
strange.
those lines.
Keep going.
Nothing about the Islamic Republic, sir. Well, I noticed this because, Alex, you may recall that back in 2023, I wrote an article on stochastic terrorism.
That is correct.
Maybe it was 2022.
Although you did neglect the B angle.
I did neglect the B angle. That is stochastic in even more ways.
You stayed with the A angle. Anyway.
So, I wrote an article on stochastic terrorism, and I noticed that Juliette Kayyem, the woman who has been the leading voice in discussing the phenomenon of stochastic terrorism across all media outlets during the first Trump administration, has remained silent on the topic of stochastic terrorism since 2023. Now, Alex, I don't know how intimately familiar you are, if you remember exactly what stochastic terrorism was, but as someone who did write one of the earliest articles going into outlining the phenomenon,
you
and how
wrote
it functions,
the piece because you're not going to say it for yourself. He wrote the piece that everybody who wanted to steal an idea and sound fake, sophisticated, would read and then pretend to have invented it themselves. Just saying, Rufo.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Yes. Now, the concept of stochastic terrorism is roughly, to just quickly summarize, it is the idea that people who wish to engage in terroristic acts can create a distance from their desire and the act itself by having access to mass communication systems and upping the rhetoric until the probability increases that someone will engage in attack due to the heated rhetoric. And it sort of creates a wall of separation between the person who wants the act to occur, the violent act to occur, and the actual person taking on the action. And in that article, the very first instance of the term being coined and used was a situation that got blamed on Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin, who had been running for vice president with John McCain against Barack Obama in his second run for president, was being accused of stochastic terrorism by what was at the time one of the most popular progressive platforms on the internet called the Daily Kos. It was a blog site, that was, you could think of as a Substack before Substack existed, but it was available for liberal progressive writers, some of whom still float around in the world today, but no longer post to that platform. However, it was a central hub for people of progressive persuasions to go, and that is where the idea of stochastic terrorism was actually coined. And there was a woman in Congress named Gabby Giffords who was shot by a person in the head with a long-range rifle. And this shooting was blamed on Sarah Palin because she had a super PAC that she was running, a political action committee that had released a target map of districts that they wanted to target. And it used the stereotypical firearm bullseye iconography, the crosshairs, yes, to show where they were targeting. Now, this type of rhetoric had always been used, but because Sarah Palin used it, the term stochastic terrorism was coined in order to be able to accuse her of wanting Gabby Giffords to be shot. Now, ultimately, it turned out that the person who attempted to shoot her was actually clinically insane. We are talking someone whose ability to comprehend reality was so disconnected from what reality actually was that he was incapable of any rational thought whatsoever. So I go into that in detail on the article on my Substack, and you can read that. But the term, as I described it, became popular, and people like Juliette Kayyem, who was an advisor in the Obama administration of national security, it became popular as a weapon to wield against the right side of the aisle, where rhetoric that might be hyperbolic in nature, or even in some ways described as violent imagery in nature, hyperbolic violent imagery, was accused of having the intent of creating lone wolf stochastic terrorists, where the idea, again, is that by increasing the rhetoric, you are increasing the probability that someone will take action and go to town shooting at people that you want taken out. But since that term started to gain popularity, incidences going the opposite direction, meaning from the left to the right, were not given the same coverage and discussion of being stochastic terrorism. One of the first ones that I discuss in the article was from 2017, when pretty much the entire Republican congressional membership was taken out by a man with a assault rifle at their annual baseball game. Most people don't even remember that occurred. It was right at the beginning of the Trump administration. That was a Bernie Sanders supporter who was disgruntled over the healthcare debate. There was the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh when there was a leaked, the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, when there was a leaked preview to their ruling that was going to remove the quote right to abortion. and make it a state choice sort of option. There was someone who went to go and was actually turned themselves in, but was intending to go and kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And there are several other examples. And of course, this sort of concept picked up steam in the last year or so with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the 2 attempted assassinations of Donald Trump, now followed by a 3rd attempt assassinating Donald Trump. And the woman who was most responsible for bringing the term to wide audiences is Juliette Kayyem, who has remained silent since 2023.
Yep. Yep.
So,
I mean, it's fascinating because you can sort of see what they're talking about, right? You can see the point. By the nature of conversion ratios and whatnot, you can imagine how somebody might start saying, when somebody rid me of this troublesome priest or whatever, right, in order to cause someone without directly asking to get rid of somebody. But yeah, the pattern that you raise is that's fine, I suppose. Like you could talk about it, but there's a limiting principle to talking about it, to making a big deal about it, because sooner or later you're going to find somebody on your side of the aisle that is doing the same thing, unless, of course, there's option B. We're not talking about the bees. There's option B, which is to just talk about it when the other side does it. They go quiet when it happens on your end, and that allows you to have your cake and eat it too, where you get to create this boogeyman that, so long as your base isn't doing active inference and connecting dots they shouldn't, you get to reinforce a picture that you want reinforced without paying a price for it. In that, this is the sort of thing that anybody could wield very easily, right? And I'm not talking even about the ridiculous stuff that was done in Sarah Palin's direction. I'm talking about somebody who genuinely could be accused of fomenting some sort of action. But again, it's so easy to what was there was one case where they said, oh yeah, now I remember, yes. Let's say in the case of the CEO that Mangione killed, right? They said, I don't know if it's Mangione himself or some manifesto or just people trying to justify what he did. And they say, the CEO of that healthcare company engaged in indirect murder of the people that he didn't cover, right? Once you can define an act with, highly probabilistic edges in there, right? When you kill somebody, you've killed somebody. You shoot a gun and they die, right? Like that the causality chain there is pretty hard to challenge. Yeah, and even then you could, it's not a slam dunk, but you could do the work, and in many cases sort of, truly go beyond a reasonable doubt. But when we're talking about stuff like this, where it's sort of wink, wink, nod, nod, whatever, well, that's a whole other story. And again, that's why you don't want to over broaden the filter here, because then everybody is in the, well, quote unquote crosshairs. Don't take me seriously. Don't take me literally on this one. Yeah. So that I don't know if I'm sort of getting at the pattern you were trying to raise. That yes, this could be a valid thing to accuse somebody of, but be mindful that if you go over eager on this, your side is gonna, just by the law of probabilities, is gonna have its fair share of it.
Well, in the article, I broke down what I believe is the psychological and propagandistic strategery behind the term and the way that it has been sort of played out. Now, of course, you don't hear about it much, again, because things have been now lopsided as far as major public incidences sort of crowding out the ones that are useful to bring the term to light. But I said that the first move of the game, I'm going to read a little bit from the article here. Stochastic terrorism is a truly clever piece of rhetoric because it creates the illusion of sophistication and rigor. Stochastic is not a common word except in the world of probability and statistics and fields that heavily rely on them. Nobody goes to the grocery store and bumps into an old friend from middle school they haven't seen in decades and says, "It's quite stochastic that I bumped into you today." The phrase sounds to the average person as being very academic. Only very intelligent and erudite individuals must discuss complex subject matter as stochastic terrorism. Taking control of this idea is the first part of the game. So then I go on to the second part. Because the term does have a relatively easy to grasp concept, increased rhetoric makes people riled up and more likely to engage in hostilities. It sounds academic and authoritative and has serious experts who study it, like Juliette Kayyem. People will copy and spread the idea. That's the second move. And the third move, because experts are pointing out examples and beginning to explain properties and nuances of stochastic terrorism, eventually those on the side being accused of stochastic terrorism will use the criteria themselves. But the point of the game is to establish and maintain rhetorical asymmetry. It's not to establish the idea of stochastic terrorism and hold all people up to a new higher standard. Therefore, a robust set of responses must become instinctive to those wishing to maintain control over stochastic terrorism claims. And one of the stages of responses, as I said, is to be brazen in your hypocrisy. So while an event like last night might occur, where there is an attempt on the president's life by a person who believed in their heart of hearts that they were doing the cause of justice for all of humanity, the immediate response on the left is either that it's a false flag and Trump staged it in order to make people sympathetic to him or whatnot, that he did it to distract from other problems and make people sympathetic to him, or that they will throw back some sort of accumulated fake statistic about the fact that most of this type of violence comes, quote, from the right, as an attempt to say, what about? Well, what about this? Distract from the issue at hand and go into attempt to talk about, well, all the other instances, this only happens once every 2 days or something. Not this is much worse on the right, as they try to argue. But additionally, be brazen in your hypocrisy so that whenever an instance like this does occur, you try to make sure that you continue to be allowed to use the rhetoric by saying it's not the rhetoric that's doing it. You never once cede ground, despite you wanting to use the phrase stochastic terrorism against your enemies in the future. So I attached that article to the space if you do want to find that interesting and want to go through the history, because I do think that in my estimation, because I did spend a lot of time on it, that it is the most authoritative resource on the concept that is still to this day can be found. I'm going to invite people up to speak. It's about the halfway mark. If you have any comments on any of the stories we've covered or want to bring up something we haven't discussed yet that you don't think we're going to get to as we think about moving on. Alex, is there anything else on the stochastic terrorism idea while we give people time to request to speak that you want to opine on?
Yeah, if I just have an article title to suggest if Juliette Kayyem does come out at some point and makes a statement about some other incident that she feels is perhaps more rhetorically usable for her side or whatever, and you wanted to write about it, you can use the title Yippee Kayyem, motherfuckers. There you go.
Well,
that's what I was holding on to.
Well, just to give people a couple more seconds to request to speak if they want to, some of the examples that I have in that article of the brazen and the hypocrisy is whenever that gentleman that I referred to in 2017 trying to shoot up the Republican baseball team during their practice session, the reaction from people in left-leaning media. So one of them was Jesse Benn, who was a writer at the time for Huffington Post. Huffington Post being, if you recall, one of the largest at the time left-wing blog site news magazines. Wrote on Twitter on 6/14/2017, For violent resistance to work, it'd need to be organized. Individual acts can be understandable, but likely counterproductive. A man named Malcolm Harris, who was a blue check at the time, and if you recall, blue checks were the certified authoritative voices on Twitter. Those were the people that Twitter thought their voices were important and it needed to be elevated and their identity and accounts protected by the blue check, wrote, if the shooter had a serious health condition, then is taking pot shots at the GOP House leadership considered self-defense? Now, remember, this was the same day that the event occurred, when literally we are talking about at least 8 Republican Congress members nearly losing their lives due to shots being put right in their direction. The seriousness of the matter could not be higher for the moment, right? Where you would expect, if people were being reasonably behaved citizens, that they would equally decry this potential violence as they would decry all violence that might occur on their, to their side as well. Yet we just generally don't see that, except for some strategically placed high individuals, like, let's say, people in Congress who tend to not make the same mistakes. But more blue checks said, this isn't some unknowable statistic either. The people whose lives are threatened by the GOP know exactly who they are. It seems callous to say it out loud, but Republicans are pushing a healthcare bill that will kill people, as dead as any shooting victim, justifying the attack. So there's plenty of rationalization that goes on. And this was 2017. So after 9 years of this type of mentality continuously being reinforced by people in the blue bubble, as you know, they moved to Blue Sky, where they didn't like Twitter because it had a couple more annoying groypers on it, and they moved over to Blue Sky, where even the unfortunate man who just lost his life, the actor / director who did
yes, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, he left to go to Blue Sky too, and then he found it insufferable because they were too nuts over there. Like the sort of self-referential and self-reinforcing rhetoric that goes on in those groups who start to corral each other, hype each other up into a narrative that this type of activity winds up being increasingly acceptable and understandable. And so that sort of is why you get events like yesterday, where the manifesto doesn't read like some unhinged person. It sounds like someone who has been steeped in the idea that this is the right course of action, given the premises that Trump is the next Hitler.
Look, I got to be careful in how I say this, but it is important to say, which is that, unfortunately, in this particular situation, as opposed to whenever the original one happened, we do have the president retweeting articles in the spirit of, not in the spirit of, actually, literally saying, oh, if you can't get a deal out of Iran, just murder whoever is not agreeing with you until the people who will agree with you are left. Okay? This has been, I don't have to infer anything here. This is not speculation. This is actually things that are happening. So unfortunately, it's very hard to say, like, oh, it's only on one side. That's promoting the concept that you can just kill the people that are, not agreeing with you, and then, I don't know, you get to some sort of nirvana. Of course, I think that's terrible logic, and it doesn't work. But yeah, it has to be. This has to be brought up.
We would though say that there is never an application in broad acceptance that the situations of international warfare apply to the immediate social class of the citizens of a general state. That the logic that you take to international politics has never really been directly applicable to the logic that you take to maintaining a coherent state, so that the things that we afford ourselves as actors on the international stage, like espionage and things like that, are still crimes for the citizens of a country, whether or not you do it on the international stage.
I'm not speaking as a lawyer. I'm speaking as a human being and saying that if the logic is kill the people that get in your way, then it's hard to make a distinction that that logic should only be practiced in international borders and only by Trump, but not by people who don't like Trump or something like that. It doesn't. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't. You can't, like, that distinction is a hard one to draw.
Well, it's also difficult to persuade people who are already dead set on this type of behavior that their behavior is inappropriate to begin with. There's a long line of justification that precedes them concluding that this is the right course of action. So,
let me put it differently. It would be a far better case was that not done. And by the way, just for completeness, and because I really do have to say this, this doesn't work. By the way, this logic doesn't work. Because even if you did have moderates and non-moderates and you killed the non-moderates, even though that does practically appear to be the opposite of what they're doing. But if you did do that, nobody tells you that the former moderates are now going to A, take control of the situation, and B, be in any mood be moderate with you once you've killed half the people in their political system, and then sort of put them in a position where they look like they're caving. So I not only do I not like this sort of action, I think it is completely it doesn't work.
But not liking it comes first. It's not just impractical and ineffective.
Well, I do not like impractical and ineffective things, so it's a little confounded.
Okay. All right. Well, there's probably a set of practical, impractical things and ineffective things that they're neutral about emotionally, and I would assume that this is one that you are not neutral about.
I just want to I'm making it extra clear because I don't want people to say that I am sort of endorsing this in any way. That's right. Why I'm going out of my way here.
I don't think you need that disclaimer, because I don't think, I at least never would imagine that. So, but just I accept your
idiocy on the internet will surprise you, my friend. Even you.
I've never seen the internet. I've never seen the internet. Can you tell me more about this interconnected network of devices?
Well, I'll tell you this. The problem is not the device.
Okay. All right. So, Alex, I think we're going to now move on to everyone's favorite segment, which is Gator Annoys Alex.
It's time for everyone's favorite segment. Gator Annoys Alex. Gator Annoys Alex. Annoys Alex. Gator annoys Alex.
We're going to start with some new Sam Harris clip here, and then we're going to take a tour through our history with Sam Harris, because I think it's time that we actually go back and revisit some of those old classics to explain to some of our new listeners our long-standing history with Sam Harris, because while he doesn't mention you or I in this clip, he does bring up Brett, and he brings up Brett in a way that is historical to our interactions with Sam Harris. And
let's just say that my indirect interactions with Sam Harris have not made him more fond of Brett.
Exactly. Correct. So we will give context to that history today. So we will start with the new clip here.
It's a great question from a Substack subscriber. You said conversations with people you strongly disagree with can be unproductive, hard to fact check in real time, prone to confusion. But you've also argued that conversation is our only alternative to violence. And your early debates on religion showed you engaging calmly and rigorously across deep disagreement. In recent years, many of your guests seem to largely share your views, with differences mostly in emphasis. There's a real value in surfacing expertise, reinforcing important ideas, but do you worry it comes at the cost of one of your genuine strengths, modeling how to engage thoughtfully with opposition? Most real-world disagreements are messy and emotionally charged. Isn't there still value in just demonstrating how to navigate those well, even if the conversation isn't perfectly clean?
Yeah, up to a point. I mean, I think some of those conversations are useful, and I keep looking for the ones that I think will be useful. I think there is generally greater utility in when there's something to learn about an issue or something to figure out, bringing on someone who really knows their stuff and just helping me learn more in real time in front of my audience. So if I'm thinking about the consequences of Trumpism and having Trump for a second term, and just the way the rest of the world perceives us, and the loss of American leadership, and et cetera, all of that. If I bring on someone who I know I'm going to agree with, but who just knows much more about certain details than I do, I bring on someone like Anne Applebaum, right, who can just give me the view from the other side of the world. With much more historical context, and who's just deep in the weeds on the way propaganda works, and the way democracies unravel, and all the relevant historical analogies, right? So I'm not going to disagree with Anne about much, if anything, but that's not the point. The point is to hear what she has to say and to learn a little bit more each time I do that. I think that's usually more useful than me getting some person on who stridently disagrees with a position I already have, and I just know going into it that it's just going to be an exercise in my attempting to showcase their errors, which I already.
So, Alex, I want to give you attempt to react to that part first. Because
Anne Applebaum definitely knows about propaganda from the other side of the world, where she's married to the Polish foreign minister, who I'm sure has no contact with any propaganda agencies whatsoever.
But it didn't strike you as interesting there that his argument as to why he shouldn't have people on who disagree with him is because all it's going to be is an exercise in him trying to show where they're wrong?
I mean, look, this man got a lot of kudos, for a piece he put out during the George Floyd situation, where the tagline was, "Conversation is all we have. And if we can't have conversation, the next step is violence." Okay?
That was where his host, or the person asking him the question, started. Yeah, he read the comment saying that you once wrote this. What happened?
Yeah, and it's like, well, I don't think it's useful, basically. To have conversations. Actually, I prefer the violence.
He's waiting outside the Holiday Inn with Michael Tracy to throw down.
He just feels he's more of a Tracy vibe these days.
Now this next clip is about 5 minutes long. The whole point is the whole thing's important. But if you want me to stop at any point, go ahead and just tell me to stop, because I have much quicker access to the pause button. I have so much access to this pause button, buddy. I can do this really quick now.
To clean it up, right? That's why I wouldn't talk to someone like RFK Jr. I mean, RFK Jr. is basically a nutcase, right? I mean, there's something wrong with the guy. He's a confabulatory. He's a liar, absolutely a liar. But he's also a kind of a confabulator, right? He's a bullshit artist, and also I just think a little crazy, right? So you're dealing with all of that. It's very hard to do in real time. Again, for the kinds of things he's crazy about, what you want is someone who's deep in the weeds on the science of vaccines and immunology and just virology and all of it, right? So I'm the wrong guy to have that conversation. I've always said that. It's not to say I couldn't take a month of my life and get up to speed on some of that, but it's just not worth a month of my life to do that. So all of it is just.
Not worth a month, sir.
It's not to say, I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure he's wrong. And if I had to, I would figure out why he's wrong. But anyway, he's the sort of guy that will find all these arguments to tell you why you're wrong. You know?
Who has a month to spend on things, Alex? I don't have a month.
This is a guy who's one of his repeated accusations, like the repeated things he kept saying about Brett, that I just could not understand what the sting of the argument was. It's rare. Usually you understand what they're trying to get at, and you're like, yeah, this doesn't work. This one was quite something. He said, and Brett has done 100 episodes on COVID, and he kept saying this. Like, it somehow works. It's like he keeps talking about this one thing, instead of me, being a dilettante and like just talking to various people about various things. He just is on this one thing all the time. Like, why is he so obsessed with COVID? It's like, I don't know. Are you his editor? Like, what's your problem? So, he when he says, oh, it's not like I couldn't take a month off. It's like, no, you really couldn't. You couldn't. I mean, you proved me wrong. Oh my God, this guy.
At this point, you have to have a life is too short module in your brain, and consult it occasionally. And for many of these conversations that people seem to want me to have, I have to say life is too short for many of them. And it's not to say, I mean, given the right candidate, I might jump at the chance. Again, I mean, so the Monk debates, I think they asked me to debate Tucker Carlson, and I was surprised to find myself saying yes without any reservation, really, because Tucker has become such a fixture in our politics. But that seems to have evaporated. So I don't know what happened there. I'm sure he said no. But so I would do that. I would do something like that. But it really has to be worth it.
Yeah. Well, Rogan has said he doesn't want to talk to you publicly until you've debated Brett Weinstein. Is that something you consider doing?
Oh, well, no. I mean, for the same reasons I wouldn't debate RFK Jr. I mean, it's just it's very disconcerting not to know whether someone has lost their mind, right? Like, because when you look at someone like Brett speak, he just seems to be the picture of reasonableness, right? I mean, he's not getting blown around by his emotional life, or certainly not in any obvious way when he's certainly not on a podcast with Rogan. So he's not an Alex Jones like character where he's you look at the way he's delivering the lines and you think, okay, this is a kind of a case study in chemical imbalance or something, right? Like, what we need is a psychopharmacologist before anything else happens here, so that we can try to get this guy back to some physiological baseline. That's not happening with Brett at all, and yet the things he says are equivalently crazy, and the certitude with which he says them, it's totally indefensible.
Now, Alex, I reached out to Brett and invited him to come on, but he's busy today, so he couldn't join us. I have sent him this clip, and we'll see if he does something with it on Dark Horse or something. But I want to ask you, given that setup from Sam right there, that the things that Brett says, and particularly on Joe Rogan, are indefensible. I sometimes disagree with Brett, and we have disagreements, and we sometimes don't always meet, but we always respect each other and our positions. But what do you think? What do you think Sam did when he says that to demonstrate that what Brett was saying on Joe Rogan was indefensible? What do you think he did as this erudite individual that he is, this person of high intellect?
I mean, what example did he pick?
What do you think he did to demonstrate to Joe that?
I'm looking forward to finding out. I can't predict the Harris at that level yet.
Okay. All right. Well, hang on.
Right. So, I mean, you just you take his recent appearance on Rogan and you stick his claims into any LLM, and what you get is just a litany of obvious errors. And I did that for Joe. I sent him a link to my, ChatGPT session, like, Joe, just here's a sanity check. Listen to what the robots say about what Brett was giving you on this most recent podcast.
Listen to what the robots say.
Oh my God.
Making Sense. The host of Making Sense, everybody.
Jesus.
I asked my sycophantic AI to tell me that I'm right.
No, wait. Okay, so if we typed right now into Claude, is it here? Did I hear a voice?
No.
Okay.
I have Grok. If you want Grok, I have Grok. I can queue up here.
No. Well, okay. Can you bring it up in a way that I can talk to it? Hi, Grok. If I have a disagreement with somebody, is a appropriate way of making sense of the matter to send them an LLM page?
Grok, did you not hear my friend there? Grok,
we will make this work one day. I promise.
I swear to God, it. I'm wondering if it's just the way that the microphone's coming in. All right. Well, we won't mess with that experiment. Next time, I will try to make it work before the show.
Sure. Here's the thing: if you subscribe to the notion that asking an LLM is the correct way to find truth, I welcome you to apply that by asking an LLM if asking an LLM is the correct way to find the truth, and hearing what the LLM will tell you almost certainly. All right? Don't do this. This is fucking ridiculous. I am.
Oh, now you're getting all philosophic, sir. There's the old paradigm that you should never believe something without evidence, which is something that you're presumed to believe without evidence itself. And you can't just get all philosophical like that. It turtles all the way down when you do it, Alex.
Yes, and as we know, Sam doesn't like philosophy being spewed at him. So, anyway, but I'm just, you know what? Like, this is he is the guy who was saying that hallucinations and AI fakes are going to destroy society. That's not me.
But that's when other people use them. It's not when he uses them.
He types in a particularly slow cadence that hypnotizes the AI. And
he wouldn't have
sent.
He would have known there was a problem. He would have known there was a problem if ChatGPT would have told him that Brett was right. That's what would have happened.
Actually,
he would have two outcomes. ChatGPT agrees with Sam Harris. He sends it to Joe Rogan, says, look how crazy Brett is. ChatGPT disagrees with Sam Harris. He goes on the next day and talks about how horrible the information contamination is inside of ChatGPT. That's the only two outcomes of this situation.
And the fact that it's a win-win should alert you to the fact that there's probably not a way to do this. The fact that no matter what answer comes back, you are coming out ahead should inform you about the fact that there's some sort of leakage here in your epistemics. Just saying. Oh my God!
I'm going to continue the last clip here.
I'm stunned.
He didn't seem to want to do that. So he's still convinced that Brett was right about everything, though Brett thinks that 17 million people were killed outright by the vaccines. And that ivermectin is still worth taking. I don't know how to interact with that, but what it requires is, if it were going to be done at all, I mean, Brett is just Brett is not someone to take seriously on this topic, but if you were forced to take him seriously because he's made so much noise about it, what you want is someone who's deeper in the weeds on the relevant science than either of us are, and let that guy or gal have the debate. And that's what I urged Joe to do. I mean, Joe was wrong there. I wasn't urging that I talk about, do a postmortem on COVID about, RFK Jr. or Brett or anyone else, any other lunatic he's had on his podcast. I was urging that he have the relevant experts do it. Right? I mean, it's just not, it's not my wheelhouse, right? It should, I'm not going to, unlike many of these guys, I'm not going to pretend it's my wheelhouse, knowing that I can, be a quick study and sound like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. You want to be all three of those things,
like everyone else on the internet.
Yeah. To have this conversation responsibly, but I know enough of what mainstream science thinks about what happened during COVID to know that.
Now, Alex, we're going to go through our historical review here of us and Sam Harris. Now, I have been not a fan of Sam Harris. Yes, sir.
I have a. You can sequence this where you want. I'm just telling you that I'm going to DM you an article that will end this conversation.
The conversation. Whoa, you're killing my timeline here.
It won't end anything. No, okay, fine. It will answer a key question that arises, which is how does he pick his experts? As you might imagine, I have a clip about this.
All right.
Anyway,
okay.
go on.
I'll play that clip first before we go on historical review.
I saw his podcast where he brought on these experts who many of them had the right credentials, but for a variety of reasons, they didn't pass the smell test for me. I mean, one larger problem, and this goes back to the problem of how we rely on authority in science, is that you can always find a PhD or an MD to champion any crackpot idea, right? You could, I mean, it is amazing, but you could find PhDs and MDs who would sit up there in front of Congress and say that they thought smoking was not addictive, or that it was not harmful there was no direct link between smoking and lung cancer. You can always find those people, but some of the people Brett found were people who had obvious tells, to my point of view, to my eye. I mean, and I saw them on some of the same people were on Rogan's podcast, right? And it's hard because if the person does have the right credentials, and they're not saying something floridly mistaken, and we're talking about something where they're genuine unknowns, right? Like how much do we know about the safety of these vaccines, right? It's at that point, not a whole hell of a lot. I mean, we have no long-term data on mRNA vaccines, but to confidently say that millions of people are going to die because of these vaccines, and to confidently say that ivermectin is a panacea, right? Ivermectin is the thing that prevents COVID, right? Mm-hmm. There was no good reason to say either of those things at that moment. And that,
you know why this is a beautiful segue here for the next clip here, Alex? Because that's exactly where our historical review starts, except from the stupid shit Sam said. Because that's the key point here. That's the key point. Sam wants to pretend that his positions are the default correct positions, but that he just doesn't have the depth of knowledge to articulate them as well as the experts does. He already prefaced this with the guests that he decided, his explanation of how he wants to choose guests going forward. It's the people who agree with him but just have more depth of knowledge about the items.
So just to give you, and this is really where, when I peeled back all the layers of the onion of Scott Alexander's piece on ivermectin, that was the same core, which is, I pretend to not be an expert, but I retain for myself the right to pick the experts. Hence, I am the expert of experts, right? And from that puppet, one level removed puppet master level, I can then present to you, bring the puppets in, the experts who will say what I want them to say because I've heard them say it on all the podcasts. So I kind of know what to expect. So then I'll bring them in while constantly saying, well, I'm not the expert, you're the expert. So you tell them I don't know what to say, but maybe you do, which I've already approved previously by listening to you talk, right? So this is a scam. Like, there's no other way. Whenever he says, oh, but I'm not an expert. Well, okay, but he will tell you, if pressed, if you look deep enough in his catalog, he will tell you that he has a smell test. If you let the thing complete, he talks about a smell test. Oh, these guys didn't pass the smell test. Okay, so you are, the smeller in chief here. There's no... Well, he who smelt it dealt it. So you are dealing us the expertise here, and
to start,
pretending to not be the expert.
I didn't take. I've never taken ivermectin. I've never had worms to need to take it, and I didn't take it as a prophylactic or anything during COVID. I didn't take anything for COVID. I didn't get the vaccine. I didn't do anything. I just got COVID once. It sucked for like a couple days, and then I was lethargic for like an entire month. It was the worst bout of lethargy that I've ever had, but then I got over it, and I've never had COVID since. So that was my history with COVID. I'm not particularly on board with Brett's conclusions on ivermectin and its efficacy. And I know that you did a lot of investigation into the various COVID studies, some of which I helped you interpret some of the stats, not an excessive amount, but, here and there, I helped you understand what they were doing with it, how the stats worked, particularly when it got to the Bayesian parts.
You were my LLM before LLMs were.
And it's my understanding that you're even sort of just like iffy on it, but you definitely know that a lot of shenanigans were played in the major studies that were meant to decrease the possibility that people believed there was any benefit.
I'm the person who discovered. I've now reconstructed this memory, so I didn't realize it at the time, but I was the first person to say that they were giving people with a higher weight a lower dose per kilogram,
right? Who
are the people most at risk, right? That was a repeated pattern across all the studies, even though ivermectin studies in general don't do this. Like if you dose it for parasites, they don't reduce the dosage. Just for everybody who doesn't know this, ivermectin is dosed by kilogram. Like so by the kilo of your body weight, they increase the dose per kilogram, and arguably you should go even higher because effectively ivermectin is fat soluble. So the more fat you have, the more it'll seep into your fat cells and not where you want it. But anyway, they go micrograms per kilogram. That's kind of how you figure out the dose. And when they give it for parasites, that's how they do it, with no cap, no upper limit. When they do it, however, for ivermectin, if you're over some pretty low weight, frankly, just sort of the 70, 80, 90, 100 kilos, which is I don't know what it is in pounds, but it's like, let's just say below the average weight of the American male. Okay, just adult male. It's somewhere around half the people, basically half the males and like a third of the females, say in these studies, were underdosed. And I discovered that. I think it's a pretty big shenanigan, if you want to call it that. Among other things, many other things, actually. But look, my position has always been that I don't know what it means to say this drug works. That is a claim that I feel makes no sense. It's a very, very hard one to defend in all places, for all people, for all preparations of the drug, for all whatevers. What I did say at the time, and I still would say today, is that it's worth taking if you have COVID, because the risk is so ridiculously low. And the evidence is, I call it a Murray's wager. Yes, but that's basically the thing. The cost is low, both in risk and in money, and the benefit, the probability of benefit is high enough that it really is a free option. And really, I think that's all that I can say from where I stand. But don't take this as like me not being certain about ivermectin. I would probably take the same stance if I look deeply into most medical interventions. I would probably take the same stance.
Well, all that is for me to sort of say that while we are friends with Brett, agreeing with Brett on all of his positions is not a requisite. That with this,
like for example, the 17 million claim that he made on Tucker, and he didn't. By the way, there's something really sleazy about accusing somebody of lying or being misinforming their audience while misrepresenting their claim. Right. Mm-hmm. That Brett didn't say, I come to you today to say that definitively the 17 million people died. What he said is there is a study that makes reasonable assumptions, I think, that shows that, there's a high likelihood that that number of people died. OK, there's a lot of qualifiers that he just deleted. And I don't agree with this. I don't think it was done well. I don't think the guy that did it was worth that kind of trust by Brett. But
it's a different claim than the one that Sam Harris put in his mouth. And,
right.
I think that's something particularly sleazy.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear as we continue down Sam Harris's path, because this is not just Brett. Sam attacked Brett, and therefore we, his friends, are going to attack Sam. It is, we are capable of disagreeing with Brett on individual issues, because Brett is the type of person who can handle disagreement with people he trusts to have a good conversation with, as opposed to Sam, who apparently cannot just can't handle his environment being tainted with stuff that he disagrees with. Like, he just can't handle it. And we are going to now move on back to July 23rd, 2021, the Making Sense podcast 256, where he had on Eric Topol. Okay. Now, Alex,
I remember that podcast.
Alex,
I remember that podcast.
This was titled "A Contagion of Bad Ideas," and we start off with this clip.
The tipping point for me the other day was I was eating at a restaurant and noticed that about half of the waiters were wearing masks and half weren't. And I asked one of them, "Well, what's the policy here? Are we wearing masks or not wearing masks?" And he said, "Well, the policy of the restaurant was that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. And if you're not vaccinated, you do." I chewed on that for a few minutes after he walked away. And then I looked at all of these young men. They were all men with a kind of a fresh set of eyes, and realized that there is no reason these guys aren't vaccinated, but for the fact that they have some spurious memes and bad ideas bouncing around their brains. And they were very likely put there by some of my friends, some of my fellow podcasters who have either gone down this rabbit hole themselves or just platformed people who spread misinformation about vaccines and about COVID, and not known enough to push back in real time against these ideas. And in sitting in this restaurant, looking at these waiters who are all podcast listeners, I just know it, I've spoken to a few of them about it, and they're advertising their dangerous confusion on their faces by wearing masks that would otherwise be unnecessary for them. This was before the explosion of the Delta variant in my city. I just figure I have to say something. So, the goal of today's podcast is to present a very simple case, which hopefully stands a chance of persuading some number of the vaccine hesitant.
Now, I'm going to deliver the tweet that I had accompanied at the time with this clip in Sam Harris's tone and cadence, to try to make sure that it is said with the same austere interpretation that his voice is often taken to be. Took less than 6 minutes for him to say the people he saw wearing masks were really stupid because they could get the vaccine and never have to wear a mask again. That's right, Sammy boy. There are no fluctuating variables in this stew, all constants. Now, that was July 23rd. Alex, do you know what happened 2 days after he released that podcast?
Do tell.
Well, Lena Wen, if you recall Lena Wen, she was the woman who I donned as being Minnie Mao.
Lena Wen.
Minnie Mao, who made many a CNN appearance during the COVID appearance, where she was one of the most COVID hawkish people that you could have. She wanted everybody like imprisoned in their homes. I'm not kidding. She had the most despotic sort of interpretation of COVID policy you could imagine. But 2 days after Sam made the announcement that the people he saw wearing a mask were only wearing masks because they didn't get the vaccine, because they were listening to podcasts, and if they got the vaccine, they would never have to wear masks again, therefore signaling their idiocy by wearing a mask. Lena Wen, 2 days later on CNN,
that we're seeing vaccinated people also get infections. Now, they tend to not be severe infections, which points to the effectiveness of the vaccine, but it's possible that especially with the Delta variant, we could still get ill, we could pass it on to our family members. And so I think it's really important that vaccinated people stop thinking that we're fully protected. We're very well protected, but as long as there are people around us who are continuing to spread COVID-19, that's actually making us less safe. And I also think that the idea of all of us going back to wearing masks again, a lot of people don't want to hear that, but we should actually not see this as failure of the vaccine. We should see it as the failure of individuals to make the responsible choice. By people saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated, they're actually choosing to endanger everybody else, and they're prolonging the pandemic.
Now, Alex, I would just like to ask you a couple clarifying questions, because you have to forgive me. Sometimes I'm forgetful. Sometimes I don't exactly understand how the world works. CNN is not part of what Sam Harris pejoratively calls Podcastistan, is it?
Well, they've tried, but it hasn't worked.
Is it my understanding that CNN 2 days after just told people that they need to wear masks if they're vaccinated?
Because they might spread the virus, because other people are spreading the virus, which might be them, by the way, since, biological.
2 days after that. 2 days after that. So we are now, I tweeted the day of that podcast that there are plenty of different variables that are going to be fluctuating, and that Sam Harris is a fucking moron for making that statement. 2 days later, Leah Nguyen says that on CNN, and then 2 days after that, on July 27th, 2021, from NBC News, a tweet from the reporter Yamichi. White House source confirms CDC is expected to recommend today that people vaccinated for COVID resume wearing masks indoors under certain circumstances. Those circumstances include if living within close contact to immunocompromised people or unvaccinated people, such as kids under 12. Wow, Alex, it sure seems like there might be situations where people will have to wear a mask again, even if they got the vaccine just several days after after Sam Harris
By the way,
declared that.
In that same podcast, Sam Harris engaged in an act of, I think it's defamation. I don't know if it's like legally punishable.
Okay.
But he basically claimed that Brett brought on certain doctors, and the exact claim is one of whom was part of this, with this being a lawsuit against the United States to stop vaccinations. So what happened is that, these frontline doctors, one of whom was part of this. What happened is he was accusing essentially Pierre Corey of being part of a lawsuit against the U.S. government to stop the vaccines from circulating. In doing so, he confused FLCCC, the frontline, doctors, frontline doctors, whatever, with America's Frontline Doctors, AFD, not Appetite for Destruction, the other America's Frontline Doctors, who had sued. So it was a completely different organization that had done that lawsuit that he pinned on Pierre Corey and by extension to Brett, that had nothing to do with this, right? He literally made up of whole cloth. He has not apologized to this day for defaming Brett and Pierre Corey, while, of course, going everywhere and continuing to talk about the people who go out there and just say whatever out of whole cloth and never apologize, never go back and clean up anything, blah, 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 blah. Just here it is, black and white. In that same podcast, I have a thread that I've sent to you that you can pin or attach, whatever, where I go through that podcast line by line. And there's a lot of things that were said that was quite insane. By the way, please understand, Eric Topol is not just a celebrity doctor. Eric Topol is the person who took credit for delaying the vaccine so that Trump didn't take credit for it in the 2020 election. Okay? He personally campaigned to stop this. This is who he was interviewing.
Well, Alex, don't forget, the Contagion of Bad Ideas episode also contains the single item from Sam Harris that is elevated to be my biggest pet peeve in the Sam Harris sort of my relationship with Sam Harris as a person that I don't like. I've never liked Sam Harris. I haven't liked him. I didn't like him in the 2010s. I didn't like
even
him
when I liked him. Yeah.
But The Contagion of Bad Ideas episode contains something that I think you might remember now is my biggest pet peeve. It is the thing that I have mentioned pretty much every time as the thing that irks me to no end every single time he's repeated it, because he hasn't used it just once. This thing. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes, it's if we can't ban the thing, we should ban the thing that leads to the thing.
No.
Is that it?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
It's important to realize that when you're talking about numbers this large, when you're talking about 160 million people being exposed to any intervention, there will always be some number of bad reactions that if you focus on those without understanding the background statistics, could make, a rational person, an otherwise rational person, nervous about that intervention. But I mean, the truth is, if we were giving people peanut butter as a prophylactic against COVID, if peanut butter were 100% effective against COVID, some number of people would die outright from peanut butter. That's right. I mean, that's just
the peanut butter argument, Alex, the thing that he has gotten wrong every single time he has uttered it. He has never corrected it, and it's a perfect encapsulation of how he is one of the fucking stupidest people in the world. Not because he got something wrong, but because he has such an arrogance about him as being so well thought and so damn smart that he gets to decide what other people are allowed to talk about and how well their thinking patterns are. That if he were to actually sit and be told exactly why this was a bad argument, he would say that his phrasing was just off the 20 times he's used this peanut butter analogy. Now I haven't officially done this on this podcast, so I'm going to take the time now to discuss the problems with his peanut butter analogy. What Sam is trying to talk about.
If only there was some sort of dosage test that we could do, Gator, where we could figure out in advance if maybe they have a peanut powder allergy, and then not insist that they take peanut butter for COVID. I don't know.
What Sam is attempting to say, his attempt is to say that peanut butter is an otherwise innocuous item that people consume in large quantities every year, and that there are people who die every day in this country. And at some point, there's going to be the combination of someone consuming peanut butter and dying in close proximity to taking the peanut butter, where the two items are just coincidental. They are not related. But the argument he says instead is that they would die from peanut butter in this thing. But if the peanut butter was good at stopping COVID and they died from peanut butter, that would have the unfortunate effect of scaring the stupid people from the application, because they don't understand background rates. Background rates are the parts where it's just the death that has absolutely nothing to do with the application. It's the background rates of death, incidents of death, where the thing you are doing is actually not contributing to the death in any way. It's not making it better. It's not making it worse. It's unrelated to the death. And it's just the fact that you have deaths in the results being recorded that scare people.
Sadly, I think
his analogy is equivalent.
Think.
His analogy is equivalent to giving people a vaccine and having a large number of people die from anaphylactic shock. And going, only stupid people would be afraid to get the vaccine.
That is exactly what he's saying. He is saying, yes, some of you are going to have to die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. That is the argument he's making. He's not making the other. He's making the argument he wants to make.
He should be making the other one. Let's
can't believe he's doing it.
He should be making the other argument, but he's not. Yeah. And he never has. He has repeated that peanut butter argument so many times. That has been the bane of my existence for a very long time, Alex.
Well, he can be rest assured that peanut butter is a generic, and therefore there is zero chance that it gets approved for COVID. So there's that.
This is true.
There's that. It's not going to happen.
This is true. However, what is the benefit of slathering peanut butter on the mask that you wear?
Look, all I can say is the bee lady should probably bring this argument to her trial and saying, some people are going to have an allergy to anything. I mean, what, am I going to not be able to like release some bees in this country?
All right, so
it is quite something.
We got the next clip here because this is going through our history with him. Okay, so this isn't just a highlight of random grievances. These are grievances that we had at the time with him.
I have to make one more element in that peanut butter story, right? Because the part of the peanut butter, like what he's doing rhetorically, is saying like peanut butter is so common, right? You literally go to the shop, take some peanuts, put them in a masher, right, and that becomes peanut butter. Like it's so simple. Manufacturing wise. So potato, what is some mashed peanuts or some completely novel pseudo virus that, would create like a membrane with the lipids that we put the mRNA inside as if it was that is what a virus looks like as well, that can attach to your cell, inject its RNA payload and do stuff to your cells. Make them do things that their own genes did not make them do, which is why some people call it gene therapy. It's basically the same. It's mashed peanuts, man. Like, why are you overreacting this way?
It has always been my pet peeve that his entire argument, as taken literally, is yes, some people will be allergic to peanut butter and they might die, but who cares? It's just peanut butter, and we're protecting a lot of people from COVID, and it shouldn't scare people because they don't understand quote background rates. Horrible analogy. He never modified it. Always the same delivery. He gets it wrong every single time, and it will bother me to no end. But here is the next one day.
This is my postscript, and it's not about peanut butter. One day, we will go through, because I have done this exercise, but I've not put out the results. We'll go through his academic career to demonstrate in detail why this man and statistics should never enter the same room. He should be formally banned by law. I waive my First Amendment absolutism for this one case. He should be banned from talking about anything to do with statistics, because of his published scientific, quote unquote, work, and what he has done to numbers in doing that. One day. Keep going.
Well, here is the next clip of how Sam Harris over time started to sort of degenerate as the COVID narrative went counter to his liking. So he was highly pro-vaccine, as evidenced by the initial thing where he said that the people who were wearing masks were stupid because they'd never have to wear masks again with the miraculous vaccine. 2 weeks later, oh gosh, people are getting infected who were vaccinated. Now they're infecting each other, so we need to wear masks again. That narrative kept going. The vaccines overpromised and underdelivered. Whether they saved people who were at risk, some people who were at risk, I'm not saying that they did not contribute any positive things to society. I'm not saying they were all bad. I'm not definitely saying they were oversold, and that it was an overpromise and underdeliver scenario with them. And I argued about it at the time. I have Substack articles that dissected things meticulously, and I got quite a lot of pushback from, that Alex will remember, from some people who are no longer on this platform, like David Fuller. And Sam did not react to this reality very well. So this is him on, I believe, a podcast hosted by a guy named Tom Bailu or something like that, where he presented a very, very well thought out argument about how he was right all along.
So you felt that it was obviously wrong to force people to get the mRNA vaccine for COVID, right? Now, I would grant you, certainly in retrospect, that seems true, but if we change a few of the variables, I think your ethical intuitions and certainly political intuitions would totally change. So you make it a much more obviously effective vaccine that really does block transmissions, like a sterilizing vaccine. Mm-hmm. You make it a much more dangerous virus. You make it a virus that's actually preferentially killing kids rather than old people, right? So now we're in an environment where, like, you're deciding not to get vaccinated is putting my kids at risk, right? Do you get to make that choice, right? And you might say, oh, yes, yeah, I should be able to make that choice. It's my body, but dial up the deadliness of the pathogen, give us something like, airborne Ebola that incubates for a month. You don't know you have it, and you walk around spreading it, and it's got, a 75% fatality rate, and it's mostly killing kids. No one gets to make that choice anymore. I mean, then literally the cops come in and vaccinate you, and I would say that all of us would agree to that. The moment, again, that you turn up the lethality on the pathogen, you turn up the effectiveness of the vaccine, you turn down the risk of the vaccine. Give me a truly safe vaccine where there's not even one documented case of vaccine injury, right? So then you just have to be completely crazy to be worried about being vaccinated in that kind of environment.
Alex, do you remember that clip? Is that a clip that you?
let me repeat what he said. If the vaccine did have cases that were documented, if it wasn't 100% safe, and if it didn't always work, and the virus is not so bad, then it is not completely crazy. Just saying, right? This is a corollary of what he said, but keep going.
That's that's sufficient, I believe, for the point there, where he was basically, I sure, maybe in retrospect, my policy preferences seem like they were overblown, but that's only in retrospect. But if you just turned reality into something that was completely different and much more in support of my insanity, then my insanity would be rational.
Well, so it's funny because I've actually dug. Man,
I got it. I know where you're going. I got it, buddy.
Is it the pre-pandemic clip?
I got it. Don't you worry.
All right.
Now,
all right.
Just 2 or 3 months before we had to deal with this COVID scenario, before COVID broke onto the scene, Sam was actually on the Dark Horse podcast with Brett Weinstein and discussing a hypothetical pandemic where he laid out the extreme terms by which the normal rules of a more liberty focused government do collapse, and that the game theoretic logic collapses to make force more of a rational and necessary component of decision making.
It doesn't matter much at all what you believe about vaccines until we invent really important ones. Until we have a pandemic that's killing everyone, and it's measles plus. Okay, I can tolerate what you think about measles because, not that many people die from it. It's just a big hassle in the end. But no, when we have this new pandemic that is got 75% mortality, and there'll be no pretense of being polite in the face of these beliefs. It'll be a moral emergency because it has to be, and this is just sheer contingency as to whether we're in one condition or another. I mean, so that's why the only thing that scales is an honest, iterative, self-critical, Popperian process of fighting toward, fighting however dimly we can see through the interface toward a better explanation of what's going on.
Striving to see more clearly, and to act on real implications. Yeah. So I really like this last point of yours about the durability of what emerges here. And in some sense, I would say we are in agreement that this is the moment to address it, because we don't have the situation of the vaccine and it's necessary for public health that people who don't believe in it.
Wow, Alex, that was a little bit too on the nose of a pre-discussion there. 75% mortality, huh? That's...
Or 0.75, or even 0.0. Whatever. The 75 matters.
In my timestamps here, so January 2nd, 2023, Nicholas Christakis, Nicholas Christakis tweeted, who was a guest on Sam Harris's podcast at some point, where they made similar errors. I just don't have anything from that conversation for today. Nicholas Christakis posted, new meta-analysis confirms early work on L-shape of COVID mortality. The median IFR, infection fatality rate, was 0.0003% for people aged 0 to 19. 0.002% 20 to 29 years of age.
You mean the kind of people that might be at a restaurant?
Just imagine
all the kind of person you're talking about. The waiters,
all of the people dying everywhere. 0.011% at 30 to 39 years. 0.035% at 40 to 49 years. 0.123% at 50 to 59 years, and 0.506 at 60 to 69 years. Even the most vulnerable did not even eclipse 1%. Now, granted, scale up 0.506, that's still, a lot of harm you'd like to reduce. So I'm not saying that it's insignificant, but nowhere in these
assuming
stats,
you had a suit that's you'd like to reduce with an intervention that would stop those people from getting infected, which you don't have. Just saying, to be clear, if you had,
you could have had,
really,
you could have potentially had, if you only administered it to them as a much smaller subset of the human population, where you gave the virus less chance of finding an escaped mutant, which they didn't do since they mostly targeted the youth at some point, which I went into in some of my Substacks, where they were focused on getting the youth vaccinated.
One of these days, so have I told you why I believe the vaccines did have efficacy? Because there's some people that believe that the vaccines did not do, like they were literally water or maybe dangerous water, but did not have any efficacy. Like it was zero.
Every brand new incarnation targeting a specific variant did prevent infection for a period of time of that variant.
Yeah, but I've also traced.
But I don't believe it was necessarily because of the underlying mechanism. I believe it was because they were causing the immune system to become overreactive and already on alert. Therefore, just it was a So I've traced specifically the trials of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was the kind of the least efficacious one, which or at least it was claimed to be the least efficacious one. I don't know about the other ones, but it had some efficacy, and I know this because it is eerie to what degree all of the variants showed up, at least the first year worth of variants, let's say, to be a little bit more tight, showed up around the time that AstraZeneca was doing trials in those places. And I have nailed down this claim to different degrees for different trials, but the one that is almost impossible to refute is South Africa, where the beta variant showed up, and it was specifically circumventing the AstraZeneca vaccine. It dropped its efficacy, even with however they were counting the numbers, it dropped its efficacy to like 10% or something, to the degree that the South African government just said, like, fuck it, we're not going to roll this out. It doesn't work here. And all the timelines work if you find the first case of the beta and when they were doing the trials, it lines up like eerily well, and the particular mutations. But you can go to arbitrary depth. But forget there's a part that is kind of ridiculous, which is that these vaccines have there's a very good case to be made that they triggered at least some of the variants, maybe lots of them. But the thing I want to say to the dissident side is that this can only be done if they did prevent some amount of virus. Well, so they did. I believe surviving. They did when they were targeted to the correct thing, and you got a boost from the fact of when the initial application sort of set the for lack of a better description, set the immune system on overdrive. That's why people would feel sick after getting them and things like that. You have overactive
because you had the variants spreading where the original wouldn't. Like it did create an adaptive environment. That's what I'm saying. It's not oh, you got better at fighting all viruses or whatever. It did somehow target this particular thing.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying that the part of the efficacy calculations early on were not able to separate the actual ability of the specific vaccine's ability to prevent infection over a good enough period of time, because it also lost its ability to protect even for the variant that it was geared towards, not to mention
So even that protection you bought was temporary. Yes. Anyway, but long story short, this is why I am reasonably certain that they did do something, that they were not inert in regards to the virus. But okay, again, this is complicated, right? There's population dynamics, there's all sorts of things, and somebody like Sam Harris just steamrolls over this whole thing And it's like, oh, these people are crazy. They won't take it because whatever. And, they're just listening to the wrong podcasts, and we've got to force them effectively, right? Like, that's what they're saying. If my kid, actually, funnily enough, he's making a stochastic terrorism argument. He says, you're not doing the thing that you should be doing to protect broadly the people in your community, and you never know who's going to get hurt, but somebody is. Therefore, we skip over all the probabilistic steps and we just blame you for the murder.
Well, we have him 3 months before the pandemic talking hypothetically about a pandemic where the rules of a more libertarian society and a free society break down logically, and the game theoretic conditions make it such that a government intervention at 75% IFR is something that makes sense.
Whatever's left of the government.
It's
anyway.
one of those extreme conditions that most people can kind of understand, regardless of how much of an anarcho-capitalist they are, like yours truly. I'm going to go, okay, that's what's going to happen. I get it. So I'm not going to win that argument. Okay. You sort of, it's sort of an extreme situation.
In the 75% mortality situation, you don't get out of your house. Okay. Fuck right. Vaccinations. What are you talking about? Like, what are we?
Well, anyway, he goes from that to immediately being put in a scenario where 75% was never even one of the potential numbers. There is no situation, no reporting, not even a time period where 75% mortality was the fear.
In the cards, yes.
Then we have the dealing with the situation for approximately a year before we have these vaccines. Then 6 months into it, he is still harping about how it needs to be now mandatory, despite nothing ever being similar to the reality that he was talking about. Then only when the narrative was shifting against him, public sentiment was shifting away from all of this and going towards this was an overreach. Only then does he revert back to the 75% hypothetical on Tom Bailu or whatever his name is, going like, well, look, if all the situation were the original thing I said would be reasonable, then it would have been reasonable. But it wasn't. Sam, we lived in reality, and reality at no point matched your hypothetical scenario.
And also, another error he makes is that in his thought experiment, which again, I heavily advise people to not engage in, but in his supposed thought experiment, he's behaving as if it's a turn-based game, right? Where you are provided with a set of information, one-off, right? Everybody in the world, it's like a game of diplomacy, if you ever played diplomacy, where everybody in the world has access to game state, and they must make a decision unbeknownst to them what everybody else in the world will make. And then we turn over our cards and everybody shows everybody their decision, and then we found out who was vaccinated, who wasn't vaccinated, who's at fault, who, whatever, right? But meanwhile, back in the real world, right, this happened very slowly. We heard the reports. We understood the research. We figured out the IFR. We saw that the people who were getting the vaccine were also getting COVID. We saw that they were themselves spreading to others. All this information came to us before we were even allowed to take the vaccine. So it's not like, we woke up one morning and we just had we were given, a piece of paper with information in it, and we had to take a decision by night, and that was it. And the bad people who were listening to the podcast didn't respond appropriately. It is ridiculous the way he models it. It's like, they had access to this information, which was bad, which actually was actually good, but never mind. I thought it was bad. But if it was worse, then it would be better or something. It's like, no, if it was worse, we would have taken a different decision, Sam. Like, we are data driven. I don't know how to explain this to you.
So because Sam's was taking this more authoritarian sort of perspective, he was constantly going after Brett Weinstein for Brett's takes, which was far more hesitant and skeptical of the leading narratives at the time. And we weren't Alex and I weren't necessarily doing this to defend Brett or anything, but Sam was annoying us because he was part of the original classic IDW. So his presence was in, our social circles pretty heavily until COVID started to.
It's hard to imagine right now, because right now, all I see about Sam Harris is, wow, this guy's a fucking moron. But back in the day, he had a lot of defenders.
like in the same circles as we are. It wasn't like some non-entity showing up and like, you know, mouthing off. Right now, he's a punching bag and has remained a punching bag ever since I published that clip.
Well, we're getting to the clip. We're getting to the clip. Like I said, this is a historical review to explain how we got here, because this is why you and I have somewhat of an investment in Sam Harris, in Sam Harris's podcast. Yes. So Alex and I were reacting to these things because we were also on the skeptical side, and we were also actually taking a considerable amount of time in our personal lives to do personal review and do inspection of certain things. Alex was doing it more on the ivermectin side to look at those reviews, and then he already discussed what he sort of found in his inability to reach certain conclusions with the data available. And I was doing reviews of the vaccines. I did a long review of the initial rollout in Israel, where effectively speaking, like 80% of the population was all given the original Pfizer vaccine, and I had done a review of the research that was done there, talked about how media was misportraying the results dangerously if you take certain aspects of the considerations as serious and given. And I went thoroughly throughout that, and I was getting attacked by people in the media like David Fuller. Alex, I think that's actually where you first started to become aware of my existence more fully, which was the back and forth with David Fuller over that article.
I got a fuller sense of your existence, yes.
See how quick that was? See that?
Very good.
So that, you know, defending that sort of territory, despite it being against the popular narrative, even as much smaller accounts as we were, became part of an important dynamic where, you know, the government was overreaching greatly. We all remember the Biden administration wishing everybody a happy winter full of death whenever they were threatening us when we didn't, you know, people weren't getting vaccinated at the rates that they wanted, and Joe Biden going on television telling us all how disappointed he was in us, and then having people lose their jobs because they didn't want to get vaccinated and things like that. Those were very contentious times, and Sam just kept up this very arrogant and, you know, fingers in his ears sort of attitude, never updating and never making any mea culpas, and literally just going, I would have been right if the facts would have matched my sentiments. The fact that reality didn't happen to cooperate with my correct opinion is just an accident. Like,
the next time that this happens, I will have been right, and you will have been sorry that you hadn't. My
more sophisticated understanding of the scenario makes me more correct, even if the reality didn't line up that way. Now, we get to Alex and I continuing this sort of pattern frequently as Sam would either make guest appearances or make certain appearances and say something that would catch us off as going, that's the most batshit insane thing we've ever heard. And Alex accidentally, not on purpose, stumbled into a clip that became sort of a wildfire. It garnered millions upon millions of views on this platform.
It made it national news, actually.
It became national news later that night, I believe.
Even Australia got covered across.
Which was a clip where Sam Harris appeared on the Trigonometry podcast.
I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like, there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden. But even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right? Or China. It is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a firefly to the sun, right? I mean, like there's just, it doesn't even stack up against Trump University, right? Trump University as a story is worse than anything that could be in Hunter Biden's laptop, in my view, right? Now, that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's Twitter account. Like that's just a conspiracy. That's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. Absolutely, it was. Absolutely, right. But I think it was warranted, right? And again, it's a coin toss as to whether or not
Sam, I'm sorry.
That particular piece.
I'm really sorry. I was the one that said we should move on, but you've just said something I really struggle with there, which is
the kids in the basement.
Fuck the kids in the basement. I'm interested in democracy. You're saying you are content with a left-wing conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically re-elected as president.
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left-wing, right? So Liz Cheney is not left-wing, right? Liz Cheney is doing everything in her power.
You're content with a conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically elected.
But there's nothing, conspiracy, it's not, it was a conspiracy out in the open. But it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what part's conspiracy, what part's out in the open. I mean, I think it's like, if people get together and talk about what should we do about this phenomenon, if it's like, if there was an asteroid hurtling toward Earth, and we got in a room together with all of our friends and had a conversation about what we could do to deflect its course, right? Is that a conspiracy? Like some of.
Yes, Sam. That's a conspiracy. Now,
if that involves sacrificing multiple people, millions of people, yeah.
So I wrote an article in response to that clip because it became viral. It was Alex, probably one of your most viral tweets.
I don't think I mean, I've had more viral tweets, per tweet, but I don't think I'll ever. I mean, who knows? But the impact of that one tweet in the thread, by the way, that I actively was trying to get people to not read. It was just for my friends. And I literally said, if you don't like naughty language or whatever, get the fuck out. Like that was at the top of the thing of the thread was like, if you're like going to be like weird about it, just fuck off. I don't care. I don't want this to get visibility. It's only for the people, who are my followers, who might watch this and who might have a chuckle. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Well, I wrote about it, and a couple days later, after it blew to epic proportions, and I pointed out pretty much things that happened throughout the podcast. And so I said at the beginning of the trigonometry interview, Sam is asked to describe what makes him stand out as a public figure. He says, I think there's one algorithm I'm running more than most, which is, what I would call intellectual honesty. The burden is not to be who you were yesterday. The burden isn't to join some tribe who, you'll get some social reinforcement from for, conforming to. Insofar as I'm continually just trying to figure out what's true and what's consistent to what I claimed was true 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago, that causes me to just bump up against taboos and blasphemies and theologies that are more rigid than that, right? I mean, even having an identity itself is too much, Not only can you not conform to a tribe, you can't really even conform to who you were yesterday if your master value is to be honest and rigorous and available to new data and new arguments and new insights. Now, we just went through sort of a situation where prior to the pandemic, he said that if the infection fatality rate was 75%, it justifies all of these draconian actions. We had a situation in reality that he faced just a few months later that was not even above 1% infection fatality rate, and he knew that, yet he still favored those draconian policies. And then after the fact just said, but had it been a 75% infection fatality rate, then my behavior would have been perfectly justified, therefore I'm still right. We've already seen that he has an inability to perform this thing that he says is what makes him stand out as an algorithm, which is intellectual honesty, and continually just trying to figure out what's true and what's consistent to what I claim to be true 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago. We've already seen him have an inability to do that.
No. You can just read the quote itself. I just noticed this while we were reading it and notice the bullshit in it, right? Because he says, what is true and what is consistent with what I claimed, 5 minutes ago. I don't know what he said, 5 years. Okay, so which of the two, right? Because
I can forgive him for that. Meaning,
I can't, because then he says, even having an identity is too much. So, are you committed to the sequence of statements you have made, you as an identity, as a person, as a brand, or are you committed to truth? Because if you're committed to truth, surely you must admit that you can't have been getting everything right.
I will be, yes, I will be polite.
Let me finish the thought. I'm getting there. So if you will admit that you haven't gotten everything right, can you give us a list of 5 things that your intellectual honesty argument has flagged as errors that you have made? Your time begins now. You have 30 seconds.
Well, I'm saying
What do you think he's going to say to that?
I would read that charitably. I would just say I would read that charitably and say that what he is attempting to say is that he's not forgetting the things he isn't. What he's claiming to do is not forget that he said something was true and just pretend that he never said it, and that he would be consistent to admitting to that history, which I know he doesn't do. So then
he can give us the list of corrections he's made, right?
And then I point out.
Surely he didn't get everything right the first time by accident, so he can tell us, like, I said this, and then it was wrong, right?
And then later in the article, I bring up the part that you have in the clip, and I say, in an exceptionally short time, Sam has demonstrated his quest to figure out what's true and to be consistent with what he said to be true 5 minutes ago by the following sequence of claims. There was absolutely a left-wing conspiracy to withhold information from the American public to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. It's not a left-wing conspiracy because Liz Cheney supported it. Conspiracies out in the open are not conspiracies. It doesn't matter how much or how little is out in the open because it really is a conspiracy. Is it really a conspiracy if people are just conspiring? So like we have him with an inability to do it within a 5-minute period, and we have him with an inability to do it within a 5-year period. So all we can really say is that to the best of our estimation, he has an inability to do it. Now, Alex, I have claimed that you and your carving of this clip and my involvement being somewhat in spirit and somewhat in camaraderie with participating in the regular version of this clipping and commenting.
And definitely emotional support in the background when people weren't seeing it. Being on my corner.
This is the precipice for Sam actually leaving Twitter. I have made this claim, and I would argue that it is not just me making this claim, that it is, in fact, the claim of Sam Harris himself.
Is that I think that heated moment is now over. And I always hate good people disagreeing and falling out. I hated what happened. I'll say this in front. This is true of both me and Francis. We hated what happened with you after the interview with us, and I said this to you in an email. The person who clipped that is not a good person.
Right.
You are a very, very naughty person, Alex.
So just to drill down on this, the reason why I'm sitting with you here is because I perceived you guys to be totally ethical in how you handled that moment. Yeah. And it was a conflicted, that moment worked to the massive advantage of your podcast. It brought immense attention to your podcast at the absolute reputational cost of me, right of center. Right, so like a right of center, that was a complete just witch burning of me. But I saw the way you guys handled it, and I have no problem with you guys. I've never had a problem with you guys. So that's why we're talking. But Brett amplified, I forget this guy's name, but the guy who made that clip, and I think he made the other clip I was talking about.
Is it Jack Posobiec?
No,
it's not.
No, it's Marinos.
I don't even want to give this guy attention. He's not
he's a pure, whoever he is in reality, Twitter has made him a psychopath, right?
You're just a pure psychopath, Alex. Have you ever been like officially diagnosed, or is this perhaps a little bit of?
You guys in neuroscience, surely he has some sort of professional courtesy, responsibility, right? He must know what he's talking about. I don't feel like a psychopath, but what do I know? I'm not an expert.
And your brother
is your favorite band Huey Lewis in the News by chance?
I don't. This is too American for me. I'm a little boy from Greece. I didn't get exposed to that stuff.
Locked arms with him just without caveat, and amplified him as just citizen journalist who has gone to school on all the important topics and found all the errors in my podcast. And those clips were it was a pure smear campaign, which your brother energized.
I completely agree with you. And this is Eric Weinstein also talking here. So this is Brett's brother, kind of throws him under the bus.
And so that's where I am. You know, there's no, I never did the analogous thing to your brother, and I wouldn't. And I'm not sure where your brother's head is now, where he can rationalize what happened there. But he's buddies with a complete lunatic. And what was amazing, I mean, this is a much longer conversation about how weird social media has made everything. But like when that 20 megaton, you know, faux pas was going off in your very much in your world and blowing up your podcast, in my, like, literally nothing was happening in my world. And in the places I care about, nothing was happening. And yet that was the first moment I could see how my interaction with Twitter was just giving me, you know, pure noise that was pretending to be signal. Right now, this it's not that there was no signal there, and this is something you and I have talked about a lot, you know, offline, which is, you know, I basically, based on how I've designed my life and how I've designed my business, I have the luxury of not caring about certain things happening to me online. But this was a case where it was just like my life was like air gapped from just like a mushroom cloud, you know, and it was just so enormous and so non-existent where I live that I just thought, okay, this is a hallucination machine, you know, and I've spent 12 years staring into it, and it's not worth it. So it's like the outcome, the proximate cause of my getting off Twitter was the aftermath of, you know, having gone on your enormous.
All I wanted.
Still a getter? Did we lose you?
Yes, sir. You were the proximate cause for him going off Twitter. Now, he attributes it to going on the podcast, but going on the podcast led to you, the absolute psychopath, clipping it. And
absolutely. Total lunatic. And in the same, I don't know if you have the rest of the clip. In the same one is where Eric calls me Brett. Okay.
Yes, we got that.
I think it was a very heated moment. The way people talk, especially online, encourages fighting, encourages misunderstanding, miscommunication, etc. I think you're a great person. I understand you have your concerns about the way Brett communicated about COVID. He's also a great person as a human being. And I can tell you this from personal experience, because I gave Brett a piece of very unhelpful information to him that I gave to lots of other people that would require him to take an ethical but very difficult decision. And he was the only person out of dozens that did. So I hope that one day there is a world where you're sitting around a table, you're sitting on a show or wherever it is, that there is understanding and reconciliation. I really hope for that. That's all I'm saying. It may never happen, and it's entirely up to you and Brett.
Well, to be clear, I mean, I think Brett is. I've always thought Brett was an extremely ethical person. I don't know how he got so turned around as to think that this jackass he's aligned with that his ethics are well served by amplifying that kind of contribution to this conversation.
I think that you're not. If I may, because I have the same problem you have with this person.
But your brother, but strangely, your brother doesn't have the same problem with that person.
Well, I was going to get to that, which is, I think that Brett went through a catastrophe over COVID, where he tried to make simple points, things like vaccines change adaptive landscapes with respect to fitness computations. That is a non-controversial point.
But Sam has controversialized it.
What was that, sir?
Go on.
Yep.
Well, he doesn't know that there's another podcast of Sam where he goes after Brett for that particular claim about adaptive landscapes and whatever. Anyway, we'll just move past it, whatever.
I watched the system say, oh, we have a problem. Somebody's disagreeing with the narrative. Our beautiful public health narrative is above your pay grade. The only way to get you out of this is to go after you as a human, to say you're promoting junk science, you're a charlatan, you're a grifter, et cetera, et cetera. And Brett found himself suddenly because he misstructured the point, in my opinion. Like, whatever his actual scientific points were, they were misstructured as medical advice over the internet at the time that there was a public health narrative. And even
he didn't structure it well, like Eric, who presented his theory in the most ridiculous way possible, saying that he is an entertainer and not a scientist, as a footnote to the paper. Anyway,
his geometric unity paper. You mean that is where he?
Yes.
It's all for entertainment.
He then went after
only.
the penis size of the person who criticized him. Just saying, about well-structured points.
Listen. When you are dealing with infinite dimensional, geometric algebra, sir, size does matter.
Even if he was exactly correct on every point, which I don't think he was, I knew that was going to end in disaster by his structuring of it. It did end in disaster. And what you're watching is somebody trying to claw back their reputation after having the full force of the U.S. federal government find its way, into the public sphere. As we saw in the Twitter files, that, the government is very keen that its master narratives not be taken down. And so when you see, I don't know, is it the CDC talking about come on, you're not a horse, don't take horse paste. He probably felt that he had very few friends and allies who would fight shoulder to shoulder. And so in part, as the guy who popularized audience capture as something we all need to worry about, I can also tell you that isolation and lack of friendship is a huge problem. And one of the things that I've been really upset about is we have a very small number of people who are strong enough to try to think in public at the moment. And we can't afford this infighting.
I agree.
And I personally each other. And, the one thing, Sam, that I can tell you is that a lot of your friends on the sort of the right-hand side of whatever this milieu that we're a part of, it's pretty clear everybody wants to be in contact with you. They want a better relationship. Everybody says, I miss Sam. And whatever confusions they have, you can probably find that people want to figure this out. I mean, I think people view you as a very singular and important voice. And I think it's a mistake to have all this integrity where we stop speaking to friends because they're all now beyond the pale. This time has been so confusing that everybody has made terrible, terrible mistakes. And the best of us have made fewer mistakes than others, but nobody has gotten away scot-free. It's just the quality of information. We've been lied to from too many different sources, and we don't have any institutions into which we can retreat. And I think it would be a good idea for what's coming, given what we've just seen in the last week, to try to figure out how to get back.
All I can do is be careful and honest on my side, but I have to notice when people, even some former friends, are treating me with zero integrity, and they see absolutely nothing. Either they think it's a symmetrical relationship, like we both got this sort of bad and let's just bury the hatchet, but they're not seeing what they did.
So in the absence of Brett's attack poodle, if the attack poodle went away,
his endorsement of the attack poodle went away. Right? I don't care about the poodle. I care about
assume that his endorsement of the attack poodle went away.
Totally different situation.
Interesting.
Totally different.
So if the endorsement of you, Mr. Poodle, is no longer there,
it was quite a thing to listen to. That particular. I think you were the first person to bring it to my attention, actually.
Yes.
And it was wild. Gee, I mean, think about something, right? Like some people might say that we have a vendetta against Harris and whatever, and we keep talking about it, or, to some degree, they're right. Have we ever used this kind of language about him? Say he's a jackass.
I have called him a fucking
psychopath. Moron. Fair enough. But I think the extent of the things that we've been saying is, okay, fine, you called him fucking moron, whatever. But that is understood to be a generic insult. It's not saying that this person has, particular, neuropathologies that are diagnosable by me, or it is fucking wild, dude. This is
that's where
right?
he that's where he started with at the beginning of this, right? The new clip where he's basically calling Brett insane. He said RFK is insane, and that his problem is that Brett doesn't sound insane or doesn't act insane like Alex Jones, but everything he says is insane, so he must be insane. Like, he has to use psychological disruption in order to arrive at his conclusions.
Like, it's mind reading, man. It's mind reading, and I did not particularly like Scott Adams, but one thing I kept from him is this concept that if you have to mind read your opponent, aka claim access to information that you do not have, you just don't. You don't know what's going on in the other person's mind. If you had examined them, in detail as a psychologist, even then we can have a conversation. But okay, I understand, why you would say something in that case. But, garden variety people just watching each other on podcasts do not have information about the state of mind of a different person, especially when you say he sounds sane, but he's not, or whatever you're saying. So you admit he sounds absolutely fine. You just don't like what he's saying.
Well, that's what makes it more insidious. That's what makes it more insidious. Then that's the same trajectory that we're going to get from, look, I'm not a big fan of the vice president, and at least politically speaking, I think he's a little bit slippery. But that's the same angle you're going to get for whoever follows Trump, is that they're worse than Trump, because their ideology is just as bad, but now they're more acceptable, they're more palatable. Because of their affect. If
Trump has made it to worse than Hitler level, I feel like Vance making it to worse than Trump level is a small move.
Well, it is always one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. So it's.
Anyway, but
we have Katekin, who's volunteering to speak whenever you have some room here. Go ahead, Katekin.
Yeah, I've been following the whole Sam Harris convo, every clip you played, but I just have one question for both of you. As podcast hosts yourself with large combined audience, where exactly do you draw the line for when it becomes, if ever, morally warranted for an influencer to put free speech on the back burner? Because the way I see it is Sam defended a position where he saw there was sufficiently high stakes crisis enough, like a pandemic, and he balanced that with what he thought expected harm would be from influential voices spreading dangerous information. So when, if ever, would you justify dialing back sort of the free speech absolutism?
Go ahead, Alex. You feel
you
that
mean
first.
If there was a second? You mean if there was a dial that we could turn magically by the power of government to stop people from saying things?
Is there a consequence large enough where you would sort of have to be no, this is the way it is. This is black and white. We shouldn't pour water in the glass of being contrarianism. When something like public harm is involved and in a global pandemic, it is a good use case for that being the actual use case for this.
Sure. I'm just being very clear in what I'm asking, which is, you mean in this particular case where we had a magic button that would stop something from being discussed, and would we press it? Right, because
it's not going to be separated from the mechanism. It's not going to be separated from the mechanism of enforcement. So our desires.
Because in the real world that we're in, there is no such button. So when you say, I want to, let's say, ban alcohol. What you're actually saying is, I want to empower the bootleggers. Okay, you're not going to stop it. The same thing with AI. They said, we just need a 6-month pause. What does 6-month pause means? It means that 6 months where the intelligence agencies are researching it, the Chinese are researching it, the Russians are researching it, but we don't get to get the benefits of it. That's what in actual, real world reality would happen, regardless of what they claim would happen. And this is why I'm saying, I don't have that button. The button does not exist. What exists is the delusion of a button. And, it doesn't matter what I would do if I had the button, because I don't. It doesn't exist. It doesn't. That's not how the world works. And that's why we kind of go with, saying free speech absolutism, which in some sense is wrong, right? It's not exactly free speech absolutism. It's more like, it ain't going to work. Every time you try it, you make things worse. It's like the war on terror or whatever, or the war on drugs. If you could stop drugs, maybe we could talk about, what kind of measures are acceptable in the process of you stopping drugs, right? When we know that you can't do it, what are we even talking about? How are you going to empower the cartels and, create a whole class of criminals and put, 2% of black men in jail or whatever? Sure, let's talk about that. But don't tell me that it's stop drugs, because it doesn't work. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
I'll field that question and give it a little bit more flexibility. So in the spirit of the question, the answer is no. I'm going to use the term that I wouldn't necessarily volunteer, which would be free speech absolutism, because there is no situation that I'm aware of where the people who have made the conclusion that the situation is so dire that free speech needs to be squandered to make sure that we protect public safety or however you wish to express the sentiment. I am not aware of a situation where those people are actually all in uniform possession of the same valuable information that is incontrovertible, that makes any of what they are attempting to enact free to afford them the ability to maintain their position of being correct. So if you imagine that just between two people, there might be something along the lines of 95% agreement, both in the factual content and the conclusion content that they possess. When you include now a third person, you're not going to likely get that 95% agreement unless one of those people is a simple parrot of one of the two original people. So the larger that the group of people who maintain the position that free speech needs to be squandered goes in, means that there is going to be some sort of hierarchy, implicit and sometimes eventually explicit, enforced as to who actually has the authority to speak, and that will not be gotten rid of. So the moment that you think that you are going to acquiesce to the idea that there are times where it's going to be necessary, you are going to arrive at a moment where you realize that you can't undo that because you no longer have the speech to say it's now time to stop.
So is it purely just, if you were to describe something with accuracy, is it purely just a numbers game based on like projected deaths, your example of 75% fatality hypothetical, or are there like other principles such as the quality of evidence or just long-term cost to public health and maybe political influence? Because I still think it's still not a black or white situation when you have all these other force factors. And then you think about the influence that like people like Elon have politically, like in how many followers does he have? If you have somebody screaming bomb in this, train station and there's not a bomb. So
let me try to focus the question so I can answer it as you intend to have it asked, and I'm going to do my best. So if I'm missing it, go ahead and correct me. But the 75% quote from Sam Harris involves the infection fatality rate and does not resort to a question of whether or not speech should be free or less free. It is about whether or not vaccination becomes a mandatory proposal of the government and is we'll call it a failure mode of the situation that we agree on in advance is something that we will do, because in those circumstances, those hypothetical circumstances, we know in advance and volunteer in advance that will be the policy enacted, because that is a rational thing for the society to do, and therefore there is no question when that situation arises, mandatory vaccination and all of its consequences of the use of force by the government would be the route that goes. If you are in the middle of a 75% pandemic, and you are then only having the discussion about whether or not a mandatory vaccination policy would be enacted, you are already sort of behind the game, and it is a completely different sort of scenario, and it'll just be chaos and nothing I think would be enacted. So if that didn't answer your question, would you please rephrase it? Or if that did,
no, I think it did. I mean, I know why you brought up that example. So, but like, because
his standard didn't.
Sam himself
change.
All is just really talking about at a high level harm and minimalization, but deference to evidence. So, and I'm not going to argue any point you've made about his arrogance. Like going back to the user journey of his career, though, like he started talking great about atheism in Islam, like after 9/11. Isn't that how he got on the radar? And then he became like a podcaster after 2010, where I think some of the stuff you're criticizing about him could have been more apparent because he just made himself a podcaster.
Well, I never liked him during his atheist days. I never liked him in the 2010s. I never liked him pretty much his entire career because I always found him to be a poor thinker, not very well spoken, and at times, depending on his presentation level, extremely well organized to provide an argument. But I never really thought him of a very deep thinker. Early from the onset in his atheism days, he had this moral landscape argument, trying to explain how easy it is to develop a morality absent religions that you follow and sort of just rigid rules that you don't necessarily have a concrete philosophical explanation for. You just happen to follow them. He said it would be easy, and he gave thought experiments of 2 Boltzmann brains floating in a vat, and talking about reduced suffering, and all of it collapses just off of the simplest sort of philosophical inspection about how you even do a concept of reducing suffering, particularly when one person's suffering might be the result of another thing's existence or lack of suffering. Okay, you have the idea of sadism, and you just completely ruin all of the calculus he thinks is so simple to make, at large scale. He does not have the capabilities of admitting where there are limits to the ability of him to think. He doesn't even try anymore, as by the clips that I've been sort of evidencing. He literally is now just saying, I only want to talk to people who agree with me, but just have more information on the thing I already agree about. Like, that's sort of where he lands.
Let me, however, give you some homework, which I think you're going to want to follow, which is, if you don't want, it's voluntary homework. It's not.
No, I will. I've been listening to Sam Harris for years, and so it's not that I'm not familiar with everything in this timeline.
Okay, I didn't get into this, by the way, wanting to be called a psychopath from him on all the biggest podcasts. It wasn't just trigonometry. He called me a psychopath on Megyn Kelly. He called me a psychopath on Lex Friedman. He has a lot. It's a list. But I started out as a fan. And as a fan, I remembered when he started being attacked properly. Right. And that was the Charles Murray episode. That's what got him on the SPLC list as well. So I invite you to go and listen to that episode, just the beginning. It's just a few minutes, where he talks about why he's having Charles Murray on. And what he says is, and this will sound very authentic, but also very confusing, because there's an anti-free speech moral panic that is happening around this person. And so I felt obligated to bring him on. Okay. So how the turns have tabled. He was then in a situation where he thought that the people who had made a determination that this person should be suppressed because his opinions are bringing on white supremacy and racism and yada, 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 and whatever, Sam felt that he had been complicit in that shutting down, and therefore he had a moral obligation, having been enlightened about that fact, to bring on that person and give him a quote-unquote platform in order to sort of repair the wrongs that he was doing in participating in this moral panic against free speech. So, the words are all words that he has used, but you see they're changing roles now, right? Now it's not a moral panic of free speech. It's against free speech, right? But it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's just what he wants to do. And these words are just getting used to give it, when do I get to say that what Sam is saying is a moral panic against free speech because he's saying that we're going to kill them all by this podcast or whatever? It doesn't, there is no rhyme or reason. There's no way to hold him to account for what he's saying. So, I'm not saying let's go to his house and burn it down or whatever. I think the Palisades fire did that. It didn't.
Okay, do you think he's a bad actor, though? For me, intent matters. So a lapse of not having information or taking a stance that's incorrect isn't enough for me to pull down the curtains of the hate train.
I won't return the favor of calling him evil. And I will say, I don't know. I think he's deluding himself. But it doesn't matter because...
But he's also canceled. His mindset, he could have more cognitive bias. He's been hated on by his inner circle, dunked on. So
if I may interject, Sam Harris specifically rides on his ignorance as being a virtue when it comes to his decision making. He literally used his ignorance of information as a reason to suppress information because the consequences of discovering the information might be counter to his desired outcomes. That is a Sam Harris belief. That is what you do when he doesn't know the truth of a situation and the truth might act counter to his preferred outcomes. He wants to suppress that information. He is on record as saying that, not as globally, but in the circumstances where it actually matters to him, he is on record as preferring that policy.
The thing is that there is no particular position that you can attribute to him because he has contradicted it at one point or another. So like there is no coherent Sam Harris. That coherent Sam Harris is the person who's defending a brand. That's the conclusion I come to. That is the person that will be consistent. He will consistently defend his brand, but will he be saying the same things he was saying before? No. Even about that clip you just heard, he lies. If you hear him talk about that clip now, he will say, "Oh, I was only talking about whether the New York Times should cover the Hunter Biden story." But if you listen to the clip, he says, "Oh yeah, the New York Post got their Twitter account canceled. Well, that sucks." Later he said, "Oh, I always thought Twitter should not have intervened. I was only talking about the New York Times." You can't fucking picking up and holding to anything. You will just continue to revise and revise. So I don't know what to tell you about like how to defend him. Unfortunately, I've gone deep enough into his stuff because he attacks me and then I have to respond and then stuff happens and people ping me for whatever reason, right? Take me out of it for this particular situation. I've gone deep enough into his stuff to be able to tell you that like there is no particular coherent position that he has. He hates Trump, but much like Trump, he has both said everything and the opposite.
I just wish that I want
to feel the same way as you. I started
give it time
to more recently, like with the way Trump and this administration, some things are playing out. I started to be like, you know what, maybe he was right about this or that. Maybe everybody was too hard on him, but that's only a recent opinion I have myself when I would go back and think about it. His viral moment for me was when he was talking to Ben Affleck.
He would have been wrong. So.
Do you know that clip where I think that's his most viral clip where he is like on Bill Maher and like with Ben Affleck about the 1.6 billion Muslims? Like,
yes.
So it did seem like at his core he was pro free speech and on like air basically got called racist. And
when it benefits him, he's pro free speech. Absolutely.
So let me tell you something about that clip because I've thought about it and it's good to have a chance to talk about it. I don't know, Gator, if we're running completely out of time, you can yank me whenever you want. But that clip, right, he's talking about how Muslims, right, are not themselves individually the random person you see going into the local mosque or whatever. That person is not necessarily a bad person, but they coexist in a concentric circle where at the core of that circle are the bad people doing bad things, okay? Now, Sam is Jewish. He adopts that identity, okay? And he is a Zionist as of recent. He has recently said, fuck all of the stuff I was saying. He used to say the settlers need to be dragged from their beards off the settlements. That's what his old position was. His new position is, fuck it, I'm a Zionist, I don't care, okay? So in that concentric circle are inside the people who go and smash, the statues of Jesus and who bomb the churches and even bomb synagogues in Iran, apparently, it doesn't matter, who do all sorts of vile shit. So do I get to apply that argument to Sam? Do I get to say that, well, you might not be a bad person, but you support other Jews who do bad things because they're Jews, right? Because you just said, I'm a Zionist, everybody's against us, we need to support these people. Okay, so by your own words, you support these people. So do I get to tag you with those bad things? No. Of course not. I shouldn't be able to. But that was the argument he was making at the time. And that was the argument that Ben Affleck badly was reacting to. But I don't think he was wrong on the core of it. I think he was reacting to something real, which is that if you start treating every community, you can fucking go to the Jains or something, right? Like the Hindus, you name it, the Zoroastrians. You can go to them and you will find at the core, right, a radical group, right, that is willing to go further than the others, right? is this how we're going to live our lives now? Like just looking at everybody and saying, what identities do you have? And well, I'm not, oh, you're white? Fine. I'm going to pin on you, like, Richard Spencer and, and whoever I can pin on him, right? And the guy who did the Oklahoma City bombing and whatever, right? Like, this is not a way to live as a society. Like, you just can't do it. This is the same fucking shit the wokes did, tagging everybody by identity. So I don't know. I don't think that argument was that good.
Well, that was actually what the New York Times did when they had Philip DeFranco on the front page talking about the alt-right pipeline on YouTube, where it was, if you watch Jordan Peterson and people like Philip DeFranco is just like this guy who does news roundups during the day, that he had a direct pipeline to the alt-right.
I forgot about Philip DeFranco. I forgot about him.
So it is a tried and true regular argument, not unique to Sam Harris.
Anyway, I hope I didn't. I wasn't.
Do you really think Brett and Eric are not captured either, though? Like you can make. I don't know. Maybe they're less captured or less self-motivated than Sam or all these others.
I will tell you one thing.
I let Brett outside.
Wait, Gator, let me get this thought out. Okay, you go. I'll say that.
I let Brett outside every couple days, and he can go and wander around, and then he has to come back into the cage. Yes, so he is a little bit captured, but he's not completely captured.
Somebody told my wife that they thought Brett was an asset. Okay, and my wife said, if he was an asset, he would be such a high maintenance asset. You wouldn't want.
He's way too unreliable to be an asset.
He has a lot of overhead, man. Like, who would want this man as an asset? I don't know.
we say this with all love, Brett.
I think you would agree with us, frankly.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's my take.
If you replace the four horsemen of the intellectual dark web, we kick Sam Harris out. Who's the replacement? Is it Gator?
I mean, I've kicked all of them out. So Dana's a moron.
All of them. So it wouldn't be. What do you have any replacements for all of them?
Hitchens is still alive. I will answer the question in the way I can answer it, which is that what scene is there now that is live, that is sort of intellectually active in a way, has like buzz going in a way that the New Atheists did back in the day and the IDW did for like about 20 seconds. And I think that scene is the libertarian sort of, you got Darryl Cooper, Dave Smith, Scott Horton, Tom Woods. There's like a cluster of people who all sort of operate together with, a kind of Ron Paulian sort of descendancy line, sort of, they honor sort of Pat Buchanan and Rothbard and Murray and was it Murray?
So who are the four to you though? Is it
Rothbard? Yes, Murray.
Is it Richard Dawkinson's, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, or is it the newer figures? Like we're adding the Weinsteins, Jordan Peterson. Like who actually is the
dark web is the people who IDW. Are at any given moment pushing against the load-bearing beliefs of society. Okay, they're pushing against the stuff that hurts. So when Darryl Cooper goes on and says, you know what, like, yeah, Hitler sucked, but we may have overcorrected in the way we reacted to that narratively, and everybody loses their fucking mind. The White House issues a statement about how bad a person Darryl Cooper is. That is the intellectual dark web in spirit. Right. It doesn't matter if, Eric Weinstein's over there and bitching about me being Brett's attack dog or whatever. He's not doing the thing. He's not actually
a cute little poodle. You're a cute little poodle.
Yeah.
Who's violent. A violent poodle.
I must confess, I did AI generate an attack poodle at the time, which came out really funny. I welcome everybody just to get the mental image. Anyway, but you see what I mean? Like it's like the Beatles and the Beach Boys at the time. Like they fertilize each other by pushing each other to madness in the case of the Beach Boys, but they produce good shit in the meantime. So that's the way I see it. There's always a scene, and some scenes are stale, like whatever Sam Harris lives in, where his intellectual partners right now are people who write for The Atlantic. And there is a scene which is much more grimy, the kind of stuff I like, right, to hear, which pushes against the established beliefs And that's definitely not something right now. Hitchens, by the way, I would put aside because, well, he's dead, but also I think he was way too good for these guys.
And I just float out here. I'm off to the side doing my own thing.
Yeah, Gator, you're just always the
I have no heroes.
Cynical commentary.
I have no heroes. I don't have any. So there's nobody left.
I will tell that to the statistician to the stars and others you revere from time to time. Anyway, I don't know if we answered your question. I hope we did. I really appreciate the question. It was really good. I hope I didn't come out too sort of.
Yeah. You answered it. But at the end of the day, what I think you were just talking about is are you authoritarianism and, supporting, I guess, institutionalized public opinions versus doing the alternative? And
what does that mean?
Free speech gets...
Can you elaborate on that?
I consider both Eric and Brett to be the alternative than to what Sam Harris has become, which he, during COVID, if that's the example we're still using, supported taking experts with back data and did not deviate to any other opinion. In fact, just publicly bashed any other opinion, even if they were his friends. It's so...
Yeah.
Well, Donald J. Trump has requested to speak, so we'll give him an opportunity to give a comment, and we'll close out the show with a conversation with Donald J. Trump. Is that okay, Alex? We'll get our regular... Okay, Donald J. Trump, go ahead.
Yes, I need my dose of Donald J.
Mine's pretty simple. I just wanted to say that according to Sam Harris, in 2024, if Gator had gotten a proper super PAC, if they had known about his assault on the Chinese Wuhan lab where he fought COVID personally, and if he had managed to get his placard on the debate stage, he would be our president.
Thank you. I agree. 100%. Thank you. Irrefutable truth right there, spoken by Donald J. Trump.
You're just trying to get on the cabinet, Donald J. We all know what you're doing here.
Well,
Well, we got a Secretary of War position now, so I mean that's pretty fitting. Right?
I do have a list of people I would like to fire.
Oh, sweet. Okay, that's going to be a good first day. Excellent.
It's called the employment tables.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your comments coming up on stage. We do enjoy when we have people come up and give us something other than just Alex and I talking to each other. Although Alex, I do always enjoy talking to you on these shows. I do
look forward to Sunday's Gator. Yes,
I think the history going in was a nice one because we do not talk about Sam a lot by design because I don't want this show to become Sam Harris gripe hour.
We just experienced this.
This was an opportunity where he did go attack Brett, and I felt that the historical context of why he's attacking Brett like this now, like how he gets to this position is so jaded, was a good review to go through, and because it also does intersect.
Gator, we do need to do that episode one time. Whenever you want, just let me know, where we go through his scientific work. And I can, you
with the MRI fish,
you will not believe. It's not just the MRI fish. It just is 5 levels deep in how bad it is.
All right.
I promise you will not believe how bad it is. You really won't.
All right. Okay. Well,
are you going to, before you go, get Brett to talk on this later? You said that you would try to get him to talk on here. Would you get him on here to talk about Sam, or have him call Sam on the phone live? Would he be able to do that?
We would not ambush Sam Harris with a phone call live. That would be inappropriate. Even if I might do it personally.
No. I wouldn't say ambush without him knowing, but could you facilitate a convo? That's like a retrospective, not necessarily.
Sam Harris literally just said that he doesn't want to talk to Brett at all, so I don't think that will happen.
So there's no making amends.
I gave Brett the clip. He may use it on Dark Horse as of it stands now.
Brett has come here in the first episode. I do believe he was on.
I think it was a pre-episode, so we hadn't started doing this.
It was a pre-episode.
It was actually we did an impromptu live space where I figured out how to do the whole playing the audio thing through before we decided to do a regular show. And the first thing was we were going to review a particular Sam Harris thing with Brett. That was the
I think the way this started, for completeness, was that I challenged you into doing a space on Sam Harris. So, we do owe him something.
So, with that, I wish everybody a beautifully dumb week, and we will see you all again next time.
See you next week, everybody.